Hello, everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Monday, November 21st, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then, we will head over to Allen, where he will speak with Jamie Arlen, CISO at Avian, to talk about the latest developments with Avian as well as XDR. Allen will then talk with Chris Tito-Sestito, co-founder and CEO of Hidden Layer, to discuss the launch of the new Hidden Layer ML-Sec platform, as well as security issues affecting AI and the lack of technology offerings currently available to address these issues. Then, Allen sits down with Karthik Raghunathan, CTO and co-founder of Yugabyte, to talk about the next generation of the dev pipeline, Dev Data SecOps. Allen then sits down with Kevin Thompson, CEO of Tricentis, to discuss the launch of Tricentis NeoLoad 9.0 and other new products like Tricentis Test Management for Jira and Tricentis Test Automation for Salesforce. We then go to BMC Exchange VIP, where Mike Vizard spoke with John McKenney, Senior Vice President and General Manager for Intelligent Z Optimization and Transformation for BMC, as John explained how application modernization is continuously evolving. Also at BMC Exchange VIP, Mike spoke with Margaret Lee, Vice President and General Manager for Digital Services and Operations Management at BMC, as Margaret explained how DevOps and IT service management are finally starting to converge under a larger service ops umbrella. Next up, we're airing episode 1 of our series, Engineering the Change. This series will follow the 3 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship Program as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare themselves for careers in software engineering. Then, we go to KubeCon Cloud Native Con North America, where Mitch spoke with Shahar Fogel, CEO of Rookout, to discuss the company, which is a developer-first observability platform. We will then wrap up this broadcast with 2 episodes of View with Vizard. In the first episode, Mike interviews Dustin Ingram, a software engineer on the open source security team at Google, as Dustin details how open source software is becoming more secure thanks to better DevSecOps practices in the wake of the executive order issued by the Biden administration. Then, Mike interviews Aquila CEO, Oded Harivan, as Oded explains what makes secrets management so stubbornly difficult despite the rise of best DevSecOps processes after raising $65 million to solve the cybersecurity problem. And that's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy. Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for November 21st. First up, the ticket sales and distribution giant Ticketmaster is facing antitrust scrutiny after a chaotic presale of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. The Tennessee Attorney General said that he is looking into whether or not the company went against consumers' rights and antitrust regulations. Ticketmaster canceled its public sales for Swift's newest tour for what it said was high demand, but the presale experience for fans consisted of several technical glitches and difficulties, as well as long wait times, with many unable to get tickets. With all this being said, this isn't the first time that the company has faced antitrust scrutiny. Other politicians have raised concerns over the company ever since 2010, when Ticketmaster merged with Live Nation. Next, Twitter closed its offices late last week after a new wave of employees resigned when Musk issued an ultimatum regarding employees staying at Twitter. Last Wednesday, Musk gave Twitter employees the choice to commit to a hardcore work environment or quit by 5 p.m. the next day. Additionally, Musk announced that managers must meet in person with employees once a week. It is currently unknown how many employees quit, but with this most recent set of resignations alongside the layoffs earlier in the month, This has left Twitter in a precarious situation. The layoffs have hit important parts of the company's engineering team, which controls several critical pieces of infrastructure, and could jeopardize the company's ability to recover. The Chinese e-commerce company Alibaba has announced it has missed its quarterly revenue expectations with a low 3% growth. Additionally, Alibaba's customer management revenue, the money that merchants spend on the platform, dropped 7%, the steepest decline ever on one of Alibaba's most lucrative revenue sources. Alibaba is citing weak consumption demands alongside other factors, such as COVID-19 suspending logistics and delivery services in up to 15% of places in China. Unfortunately for Alibaba, this quarter is not looking much better. The company has said that the results of its big Singles' Day shopping event have roughly the same results as last year's, which was one of its lowest growths ever. Next up, for the first time ever, a meat product grown in a lab has been cleared for consumption. The Food and Drug Administration gave Upside Foods approval for cell-cultured chicken. Upside Foods make its products in steel tanks using cells from animals that they are trying to make meat out of. The FDA conducted a thorough review, and after an inspection by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, it will be able to be sold to consumers. This is a big win for the cultivated meat industry, which they will hope will further help innovation and investments in the cultivated food market. Zooming out, scientists say that the products such as these could greatly lessen carbon emissions and water and land usage. On Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at the question of whether or not security budgets should be recession-proof. Security remains a top priority as far as budget is concerned, but does it make sense to keep investing in it during a macroeconomic slowdown? This article tries to give an answer to this question. To learn more, go to securityboulevard.com. On DevOps.com, we have an article looking at how Palo Alto Networks agreed to acquire cybersecurity for $195 million. Palo Alto Networks has said that this acquisition is in part of its efforts to double down on securing software supply chains alongside its existing portfolio. To learn more, go to DevOps.com. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article looking at how to keep Kubernetes data safe, sound, and actionable. Many organizations have begun looking for tools to protect and manage their containerized applications, but this raises questions such as how are you recovering your cloud-native data, and how can you move your applications from one environment to another securely? This article gives some best practices to safely backup, recover, and move containerized applications. To learn more, go to containerjournal.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. I'm happy to be joined by one of my buddies in the security space. It's one of the nice things about doing my Techstrong TV interviews is I just get to chat with people I know a very long time in security, when they were serious and now they're more serious, but it's good to have them here. Let me introduce you to my friend Jamie Arlen. Jamie is with Avian. Jamie, it's great to have you back. How are you?
I'm fantastic, sir. Fantastic.
Good. Hey, I know we want to talk XDR and stuff, but I other than being my friend, I think I don't know if that's enough cred on the show to get you, on a subway even, but why don't we do a little bit of your background and then also a little bit about the company?
Sure. So, hey, everybody, I'm Jamie Harlan. I've been doing security for a long time. That's an odd claim to fame. I've worked in cloud for better part of 15 years. Right now, I'm the CISO at Ivan. We're an open source database as a service company. Our claim to fame is all open source all the time and multi-cloud. So if you're looking for that solution that lets you do the interactions with the databases that your developers want to use. You want it to be seamless, friction-free, secure, compliant, and run pretty much anywhere. We're your next best stop. Predictable pricing, too. That's always fun, isn't it?
It's refreshing in this world. And I apologize. I had said Avian. It's Ivan, and I always mispronounce that. I apologize. So Ivan is about open source, Jamie, an awful lot, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. But I wanted to talk today about XDR, right? And yes.
What's XDR? Everybody seems to say that their thing is XDR.
You're right. And I was just, so, and it was interesting. You asked the question, answer your own question. What is it?
XDR is practically an umbrella marketing term at this point, and that's got sort of elements of frustration associated with it. It's the old timer being cranky. You're about to get the old guy wave, like, ah.
Let me get Rothman on here. He's good for that, but go ahead.
The theory is it's extended or magical detection and response. So the thing that we were promised 30 years ago that antivirus would make sure that code that we didn't want to run on our computers didn't run on our computers. This is just the latest evolution of that phraseology. We went through antivirus, anti-malware, endpoint protection. Now we're on XDR. And what I think it really comes to for most people in most organizations is it's almost a point of proof when you're dealing with vendors. If they're coming at you and they're saying, hey, our thing could have saved you from that bad thing that happened last week to somebody else, they're probably trying to sell you XDR. And if you dig in and really look at what you're purchasing, what you're probably purchasing is observability. And this is an area where, sort of that those old conversations that I used to have with Rothman and Rich Mogul, where you're sort of splitting in between the dev and the ops, and you're sliding a little bit of sec in there to do the security part in DevOps. We're really talking about the security version of operational observability. What are my systems doing? How are they doing it? When are they doing it? What are they doing that they should or shouldn't be doing? That sort of element of, for your situational awareness as a service is, I think, what most XDR tools are trying to do with various levels of success.
So I let you finish. It was hard for me, but I let you finish. I don't disagree with you. To me, XDR was a new name given to endpoint security, and for so many of us in the security world, there was a period there, it was right around maybe when Microsoft started just like giving away their own AV, whatever it was, where you started questioning, this stuff is such bloated pigware, and what does it really do between the heuristics and the pattern matching and all the fancy silver bullets, AI, ML, but it was damn near worthless. But for the most part, no CISOs, no organizations kind of had the balls to just say, I don't even need this. I'm done. Right? I'm not. Whatever's built into Windows, my Mac's pretty good. I'm going to stop wasting money and slowing my machines down with this crap. And so they had to come up with something new, because that is, look, those endpoint security vendors, they're cash cows, right? They are
very true.
Cash cows. So XDR, the latest, greatest iteration of endpoint security, though there's more than endpoint to it. In a perfect world, detection and response extends beyond the four walls of my device, and maybe there's an element of threat intel in there, or that's making it a little smarter. But again, it's the same old pig, just in a different suit, if you ask me, in many ways. So observability is a loaded word as well, Jamie, and that has its own set of issues. But
Yeah, absolutely. I think the point that matters though is, when I sit in my chair as a CISO, the thing that I need to understand is what's my condition? What's my state? Am I under attack? Is there something bad going on? Do I have a known weakness? Do I have a team that's not performing the way they're supposed to perform? And I can ask that question. Status meetings are the best. Or I can have a system that tries to show me the shape of my environment. At Ivan, obviously, we need to make sure that we secure our systems for our customers. And the biggest part of that is understanding what we refer to as the shape of the fleet. So when you think of, all of these database nodes that we operate on behalf of our customers, I need to understand, how close to secure is it? Our customers have the opportunity to choose their own maintenance windows. So I can have a patch ready within a day of vulnerability release, but it could take a customer 6 weeks to get that installed. And while that exceeds my comfort zone, if it was my system, it may not exceed their comfort zone. And so I have to be able to begin to understand these things. And that's where I see the value in XDR for the management of your information assets. It's understanding what's going on in sort of a broad stroke kind of way. It's collecting that security tinged operational information. That's the piece that kind of matters for me. And, walking around the floor at Black Hat USA, or most recently at Sector in Toronto, the vendors that we're talking about XDR, we're talking about situational awareness. And that's not the wrong thing to be talking about. When the conversation drifts into, we can protect you from that bad thing that happened to those other people last week, you might have been able to let me know that bad thing was happening. And this tosses us, Alan, right back into the old IDS versus IPS days. Detection versus prevention. I'd rather know than have a system taking some unknowable or unknown action. Now, you can take your XDR and hook it up to your SOAR. Let's throw all of the buzzwords in there and get that automated response to a security situation. But the point that matters the most, and the point that I really wish more vendors were willing to hammer home, is this is about understanding your condition. And if you understand your condition, then you can make rational decisions, mostly risk-based, but based on facts rather than feels.
Yep. A fundamental problem, listening to you, Jamie, a fundamental problem we have in security, especially as vendors, is we always say, I could have prevented the damage you got from last week's attack. But what about next week's attack? Because last week's attack, everybody's now on last week's attack. It's next week's attack that I worry about. It's funny, our friend, Andrew Hay, I'm sure, right? Andrew had a post up in LinkedIn. Evidently, he must have a new position at Lara's, with Nickerson and them, and he's researching cold email techniques to CISOs, right? What's going to get them going and everything. And that was one of the things that he brought up, is the proverbial, I could have helped you last week. And big BFD, everybody could have helped me this week for what happened last week. What are you doing for me next week? And, is XDR really going to help with that? I mean, I hope it does. Look, and let me just, God darn it, I don't want to be the curmudgeon here who says, bah humbug on all this crap. We've made some progress.
We have, absolutely. Antivirus is built into the major operating systems. That's huge.
And no doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's actually harder to break into these things, though, the vector still is phishing, right? I was in the middle of writing an article last week, I haven't finished it yet, about, ransomware and its effect on the XDR market.
Yep.
Right? Oh, I got ransomed. Well, if you had XDR, it wouldn't have happened to you. Well, if the idiot wouldn't have clicked and downloaded that thing, it wouldn't have happened to you either. But, that never changes, Jamie. It's still the same old, same old.
Yeah, and I think that's, not to force the segue on you or anything, but that's that sort of conditional response that you can get when you mix open source with the idea of XDR. It's that the open source world has a lot of tools for understanding operational systems observability, literally what's happening on which systems and how, using tools like OpenSearch and Grafana, using interesting databases like Apache M3 and like ClickHouse and even Apache Flink. You can start to process the data that your world is providing you and really climbing that ladder from data to information to knowledge and understanding what's going on. You can start seeing those, either positive or negative behaviors happening. For years now, I think, Rich and I wrote this stuff in one of the earlier versions of the Cloud Security Alliance guidance doc was, the need to move from plain old RBAC to ABAC, attribute-based access control. And if you can start feeding more information about what's happening into your decision-making process, feed more information about what's happening into your comprehension of state, you end up in the place where you can start to make better, more interesting security decisions. You can start saying, well, if this is happening and this is happening, then maybe we've got an oops. And until you can start collating that information, and honestly, until we start doing a better job of sharing it with each other, we're not going to get there. And in the same way that the problems tend to get caused by people, somebody clicked something.
Yep.
I think in a lot of cases, the solutions come from people. We want that mass scalability that comes with the magic of AI and the magic of ML. But somebody who knows what they're looking for, the human ability to detect anomalies is astonishing. If you think even now, you could probably do a fast scroll on a Unix logging system and your brain just sort of spaces out a little bit. And then you see that one thing and you scroll back, 50 or 100 lines and say, there's the problem. Because that some part of your brain found that thing. Well, the story of open source all along has been, don't pay for the software, pay for the operators. Maybe Absolutely. Open source XDR frees up some budget to invest in the humans that are going to see that weird thing. The best security guard I've ever seen for an office is the receptionist, because she knows when something strange is going on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you're right. Here's my issue. Just because it's open source doesn't necessarily mean it's cheaper in terms of total cost.
Not in terms of total cost, in shifting that cost over to spending it more on the humans who are running it and less on the idea that maybe you can call support and get a license. And
look, there's a long, rich history of open source endpoint security. ClamAV, there's a lot more.
Tripwire.
Absolutely. So, yes, maybe that allows us to allocate our resources. You know more about this than me, James. Jamie, excuse me, I regressed. I apologize. Jamie, let's talk about some open source XDR. Is that something Ivan plays in?
In a way, yes. We bring the difficult piece to you. So the difficult piece in all of this is managing the databases that underlie everything. You need to have very performant and honestly oddball databases to be able to do XDR using open source tools. You do need to bring other things to the table. You need to bring things like OS query. And so, go and talk to the good folks at Collide or elsewhere. You need to bring log ingestion from everywhere, not just production systems, but all of your non-production systems as well. Where are you going to stuff all of those logs? You need big databases. Do you want your security operations folks or your sort of frontline SOC workers to be dealing with the configuration details of a Kafka eventing system? Or would you rather outsource that work and do the good work that you can do with those staff members? So use the open source tools, outsource them.
Outsourcing security is probably a topic for another day we can discuss. I have real, I helped put together an early ASP in the .com days. Where, we were offering hosted Lotus Notes, PeopleSoft, some Oracle, managed firewall, and lessons I learned about what companies should outsource or shouldn't outsource stick with me to this day, 25 years later.
Absolutely.
I think in security, a lot of people outsource stuff just because they don't have the in-house expertise to do it well. Who does? There's a handful of companies that really can do the whole enchilada, when it comes to security. But the flip side is if it's core and critical to your business, you shouldn't outsource it. But anyway, we could talk about that another day.
You can outsource pieces of it. You don't have to outsource the whole thing. You can outsource the pieces that you don't want to do. I don't write my own operating systems. I outsource that to someone else. So selective outsourcing.
Well, because operating systems are not necessarily core to your business. That's not what you do for a business.
Exactly.
Right. It may be critical to your business, but it's not core. Jamie, unfortunately, we're low on time, though. For people who listen to us ramble here like two old men, where can we send them to get really smart? Where can we help? Where can they go get help?
Well, you can come and visit us at Ivan. www.ivan.
And that is
www.aiven.io.
.io. And any particular place within the website they should, for this XDR stuff, they can focus in on, or just
have a look at our open search offering. And there's at least one or two case studies or white papers on there that you can read as well.
Okay. And for my security folks out there, and even for security novices out there, look, Jamie and I are at this a long time. We unfortunately have seen trends come and go, technologies come and go, new tools come and go. It doesn't necessarily mean XDR is worthless or that you shouldn't look at it or even use it. It's just like everything else. There are no silver bullets. There are no magic solutions here. All we have is an ever wider quiver, and we keep more and more arrows in there. And using the right tools for the right jobs is critical. So please don't take this to think that XDR is not.
No. It's understanding what are you going to get from XDR.
And how to maximize what you get from it.
Yes.
Yep. Jamie, it's great to see you, man. I hope I see you in person soon.
Yes, we will.
All righty. We're out. Go check out Ivan, AIVEN.io, right?
Yes, sir.
This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to be right back with another guest here on Techstrong.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Techstrong TV. I'm really excited. We've got a new company, first-time company here on Techstrong to talk to you about. I want to introduce you to their co-founder and its CEO, I believe, Chris Tito Sestito.
That's right.
Did I get that right, Chris?
You nailed it. Yep, that's me.
All righty. And Chris goes by Tito, goes with Sestito. I know how that goes. So we're going to call him Tito on the show today. But so Tito, I guess we should start with, hey, give us the Chris Tito Sestito story.
Yeah, can do. Thank you so much, Alan, for allowing me to come on here. It's really exciting, and to be on Techstrong TV. So, but yeah, thank you. So I'm Chris Estito, and let's see how far back we want to go here. But I can say, at least in my professional life, I started as a reverse engineer in malware and kind of in the cybersecurity space, and then started finding machine learning as a very cool technology to apply to different cybersecurity problems. And back then, I started at the sort of deobfuscation of cryptography, and then learned more and more sort of ways in which machine learning can be applied to the security space, and then kind of decided that's really where I wanted to spend the rest of my career, was sort of bridging the gap between those two subject matter pieces. And that's really what ultimately, sort of that alongside of some real world events, led us to the creation of Hidden Layer.
Love it. Love it. You know, when you do something that you're really passionate about like that, that's, I think, really the key to a happy life and a successful career.
Couldn't agree more.
Tito, okay, so we've got, the Tito story. Let's hear the Hidden Layers kind of story leading up.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, for about 7 years, I worked at a company called Cylance, which was sort of the next step in antivirus, and now it's sort of caught on to all of the endpoint protection with next generation technology. But as I mentioned, sort of having that passion for the blending of cybersecurity and machine learning, that was the ideal spot for me to go. So I kept knocking on the door until they let me in, and then ultimately ended up as the Vice President of Research and Intelligence, which was work between both of those arms of the organization. And actually, in 2019, our machine learning model that we use to detect threats, as sort of the exactly what our entire product was, that machine learning model was under attack, and not with a traditional cybersecurity attack. It was actually an adversarial machine learning attack on that model. And that was really novel. That was something that we had only really ever seen in academic papers before that. It was a real world ability to bypass a threat detection model. And so it was highly consequential for us as an organization. It took our best people a very long time to right the ship and redeploy what we needed to redeploy. And so significant amounts of money. And then as the dust settled, myself and my co-founders were responsible for leading that. After we were able to really look back at it, we said this is going to be a problem for every organization that's deploying machine learning or artificial intelligence in their product or production systems. So that was sort of the event that told us that this is it's going to be a need in cybersecurity. And as I mentioned, that was back in 2019. We thought it was pretty early for a solution like that at the time. So we were sort of developing it on our own, kind of nights and weekends, and waiting for the right time to come forward. And we started seeing signs this year that there was that it really was the right time for a solution like this. And some of those signs were some more mainstream attacks that are being published in the artificial intelligence, the AI incident database. And then we also saw the creation of the MITRE Atlas team. So everyone is familiar with the MITRE attack framework. There's a new framework called Atlas, which is dedicated to adversarial machine learning attacks. So we're actually working with that organization and hoping to join what they call their consortium to continue to work with other vendors on this problem space. But it's very much a real attack vector for organizations. And I'll say really fundamentally, I've never seen a technology get this far in adoption and in deployment and use without really considering security. And when you think about other major shifts like migration to cloud or other kind of major steps forward in network, or any of these kind of technological advancements that we've made, AI and ML is pretty deep, considering we haven't really had any dedicated security solutions for it. So we knew it was a strong need, and that really brought us to Hidden Layer today.
Great. So I'm probably a little older than you, right? And I will tell you, unfortunately, I think it's all too often that security is a bit of an afterthought. It's one thing if you're doing, like you already are in security, then of course you think of security.
Sure.
But if security's not core critical to what you've been doing, you don't think about the security till I'm reminded, I tell you, 10, 12, 14 years ago, I'm doing an interview with the CEO at the time was Couchbase, had just a merger of Couch, and I forgot who they merged with, and MongoDB.
Okay.
Two CEOs of both. These were the two big NoSQL databases that had just, really burst on the scene. And I asked them both. I had my friend Rich Mogul on that interview with me. It was, an interview. And I said, does NoSQL stand for no security? Because I don't see a lot of security thought given to this stuff.
Right.
And they, in an incredibly honest moment, they said, we will build in more security when our customers demand more security.
Yeah, and I think that sort of articulates the scenario that we've all been up against in technology.
I think shit hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. It's still the same. When people demand security, and all too often, the market doesn't demand security till there's been an incident, and someone says, "Oh my, we got to do something here."
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think in my experience working with CISOs and other security personnel, there's a smaller percentage of them that are very forward thinking, that are trying to, future proof their technology and protecting it very proactively. And then I think the rest of them are waiting to see what those guys do to determine really
There's a few guinea pigs and canaries, and we'll see how they make out. I mean, I will say this though. We're better now generally than we were 15 years ago, 20 years ago, about saying, oh yeah, what about security? And, especially I would say in, during COVID times here.
Yeah.
Security truly is top of mind for a lot of organizations. And the fact MITRE's out with this, that's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Anyway. Yeah, I would have to agree. I think we're starting to see a lot of signs that security is taken a little bit more seriously. And that might be, as you mentioned, as a result of more breaches and more exposure. But, we're starting to see more security SMEs on boards now. We're starting to see, these the CISO role, interacting with boards a lot more. And I think that's a very positive sign for the direction that we're moving.
Agreed. All right, let's jump back into the company, though. You guys recently, last month, well, before we get into the release last month, 2019, you realize this is an issue, you're working on it. When did the company actually launch or come out of stealth, or however the term is today?
Sure. Yeah, we founded back in March of this year, 2022. And then we raised our seed rounds, majority of it in April. And then we finished raising that round by June and came out of stealth just before Black Hat this year, end of July. And then so we've been going at it since March, sort of full time as dedicated teams. We've grown relatively quickly. We're up to 18 employees now, and really, again, those specialists kind of bridging that gap between, we have some adversarial machine learning specialists, we have some cybersecurity specialists on the threat intelligence and reverse engineering side, and we're really working at all angles of security when it comes to artificial intelligence and machine learning assets, which means a lot of the math that's involved in some of these attacks, as well as a lot of the adjacent code and some of the libraries and repositories that are kind of powering. So we really want to take a holistic approach to protecting every stage of the machine learning operations lifecycle. And that sort of brings us to date. I think we've got some fantastic research that's written for multiple audiences. We've got some kind of CISO level stuff and some deep technical stuff. So for anybody who's interested, that's sort of our goal right now is the education side. We want to make sure that we're kind of teaching everybody what this problem is, how it came to be, why we're there, and what the steps are that we're going to have to take to make sure that we're securing ourselves. But I think that brings us to date.
Excellent, man. All right. So just about a month ago, you released the platform or a platform, or how do you refer to it?
Yeah, we call it the MLSec platform, or machine learning security platform. And that's right at the moment, it's 3 different products. And again, as I mentioned, sort of there's that ML life cycle. So you have sort of your data side of that where you're sourcing and curating your data. You have your model sort of training and development life cycle as part of that as well. And then your deployment stage where your model is interacting with your product or your production systems, and then there's sort of the validation and redeployment and all of those components. And we want to make sure that we're securing every step of that. So we have 3 components of that MLSec platform. We have sort of the integrity solution that we call our ML model scanner. And this is really important because at the moment, there really isn't a way to check the integrity of your model before this tool. When you think about sort of insecurity, we do a lot in the way of guaranteeing a file or guaranteeing some sort of structure that has not been compromised. But in machine learning, that's a little bit more difficult to do because these models learn and grow and develop. They're not, a static entity. So we had to build a little bit more complex of a solution to be able to scan a machine learning model and guarantee either something that you home grew is, from a known good state has not been altered, or a lot of organizations these days are engaged in like a transfer learning scenario where they're either pulling down an open source model from something like OpenAI or Hugging Face, or they're purchasing a pre-trained model from an organization. So, for instance, if these organizations don't have the training sets to be able to build all these models from the ground up, they might be purchasing them. So it becomes extremely important to guarantee that model is what you expect it to be. And then we're also seeing attacks where people are actually injecting malicious code into models. And we're going to be actually showing how easy that is to do at some upcoming events here in the near future, some major conferences, and we'll be blogging about it as well, where you could even launch ransomware through models, turn them into reverse shells. They're highly vulnerable at the code level as well. So that's sort of that initial kind of integrity piece. And then our flagship is actually it's an evolution of detection and response. So we call it machine learning detection and response, or MLDR. And this actually protects a model in real time. And this is really important because we wanted to take an approach a little bit different than some others have done. If you really look at the academic way that some models have been protected in the past, it's through what's called robustness or complexity. Essentially, it's like injecting noise into your model to make it really big and robust and harder to traverse and harder to infer. And that was a good first step. But today, there's automated attack tools that can do this. And that attack on Cylance back in 2019, that took about 40 days. And when we got back to look at the forensics of what was going on, today you can download an automated tool off GitHub and conduct it in about 10 seconds. So all of that sort of noise injection doesn't represent that much of a barrier anymore. And so it was also a pretty invasive technique. Like it would require those inside your organization to be working on your model, or if you wanted to work with a third party, it meant you had to give them a lot of access to all your raw data, to your algorithms themselves. Well, we didn't love that approach. We wanted to create a product that could protect a model without having to get inside it. So we actually measure the way that users or requesters of the model interact with it. And with that data, we can actually look at mathematical patterns to identify whether or not somebody's using your model as they should be, or whether they're reversing it or tampering with it or engaged in poisoning, something like that. So that's that kind of flagship product. That's a real-time protection. And then lastly, we have a observability tool that we can use to audit all of your security, posture across your entire organization. Or if you're distributing your models, like you're a seller of those pre-trained models, you can actually keep track of them in other organizations as well. So it's really it's a holistic platform to protect against all of those stages and really ensure that the entire data science commitment from all of the resources across the organization is secure.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit, just kind of go to market. How does one engage with the company and deploy this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We try and make that as easy as possible because this is it's really by nature, because it's a little bit of a security issue. It's a little bit of a data science issue. We want to make sure we consolidate that as much as possible. So our goal was to make sure that we were empowering security personnel to protect these ML assets without having to have a deep understanding of it. So the tool actually integrates with SIM tools that are already being used by most organizations. So like a tier 1 SOC operator can use our product and our product's API in their own workflow to protect those ML assets. And then when they start seeing patterns or they start seeing something that they need to escalate to the data science team, they can do that through the tool as well. So the reason I sort of set the stage like that is because this isn't something that could be of interest to a CISO who wants to purchase it as part of their security platform, or a chief data scientist who wants to protect their output and protect the integrity of their models that are going into production systems. But either way, it's the same way to get a hold of us. You can go to hiddenlayer.com and you can ask for a demo. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to anybody else on our team as well, and we can set that up for you. We also offer some services on the educational side, so we can do some red teaming. We can do some threat assessing to kind of let you know, hey, across all of your assets, here's where you're, and some individualized, support around, here's where, you're probably the most exposed, or depending on, what your technology looks like, where you should focus your efforts and your resources. And then we can do some education there, some trainings that ultimately can lead into using the platform itself. So really, I would say the best way is through hiddenlayer.com, but you can, you're absolutely welcome to kind of get a hold of us any way you can, and we'll make sure that we're helping you protect your resources.
Very cool. Hey, I love this. Tito, yeah, I'll be honest with you. I haven't spoken to anybody or a company who is out in front on this problem like you guys have. So, it's always great to be first mover and kind of define that market.
Sure.
But it sounds like this is something you guys have been watching now for 2-3 years. And
yeah,
time has come.
Yeah, I would say, the data science world, this is not new. They've been, publishing white papers on adversarial attacks since 2013, as far back as I can find. So this is sort of like when we talk to a mature data science team, they know how vulnerable they are. This isn't really news to them. They just sort of have been doing what they've been, sanctioned to do. And so I think the security world, this is a little bit more of a wake up call, where organizations, I think that, we've sort of seen that pattern, like new emerging technology, new dedicated products, where that really, is why the CISO role is sort of so, expansive and complex at this moment, because there really is a lot of different elements of your organization that you need to protect. But machine learning is really no different. I think the advice I give to CISOs is not to treat it any differently than any other newer technology over the last decade of your career. You've probably gone through this 20 times. You need to understand sort of you're going to require some dedicated resources to protect. I think the only difference is just how far and fast we're committing as a society to artificial intelligence and machine learning assets. I think PwC actually predicts that by 2030, AI is going to be almost $16 trillion of a market. And I think that's going to be roughly 13% of the global economy at that point. So when you think about just how fast we're moving towards this technology in every use case, every industry, every company these days is a big data company, and they're all taking advantage of machine learning to make product decisions, to make real-time pipeline decisions, as well as do some historical analysis on all of that data. This technology is all over the place. So the fact that it's not secure is really going to be, it already is, it's going to continue to be a major sort of exposure in our defenses. So I think that would be really it's a similar pattern. It's just we're hitting an area of deployment that I don't think we've ever seen before in terms of how committed we are to this technology.
You bet. Hey, just before we go, it's Hidden Layers with an S.com or without the S?
Hiddenlayer.com. It's one word.
One word.
Single layer. Yeah.
Okay. Tito, best of luck with Hidden Layer. Hey, man, keep us posted. You're invited back anytime.
Thank you so much.
So this will be an interesting area to watch. Unfortunately, I have a feeling, we'll see stuff brewing up here. So
I think you're absolutely right, Alan. Thank you so much for the time today.
My pleasure. All right. Chris Tito Sestido from Hidden Layer on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Got another Techstrong TV segment here for you. And my guest is Karthik Ranganathan. He's the CTO, I believe co-founder of Yugabytes. Did I get all that right, Karthik?
Got all that right, Alan. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So, first of all, welcome. As I was talking off camera, we haven't had the pleasure of having anyone from Yugabytes on in a bit. And so I think the place to start is remind people what the company is about, maybe a little bit of your background, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Perfect. That sounds like a plan, Alan. So I'm Karthik, one of the co-founders and the CTO, as you said, Alan. And I've mostly had a technical background before starting Yugabyte in early 2016, and I'll get to why we started it. I was at Nutanix for 3 years working on distributed cloud storage, and before that at Facebook for about 6 years working on the first generation of NoSQL databases. So myself, I met my co-founders at Facebook, and most of the original team, engineering team at Yugabyte, we all worked together at Facebook building and open sourcing databases like Apache Cassandra and Apache HBase. And it didn't seem like fun at the time, but it was great learning. We also ran these databases in production for Facebook at a pretty massive scale, right? So it was the distributed databases and the distributed DBAS, both of that, we really cut our teeth at Facebook at, and really learned interesting things. And so here we are building Yugabyte. And to answer your question, the second part, the other part of your question, what do we do? Quite simply, Yugabyte builds a cloud native version of PostgreSQL, right? So everybody wants to move and build cloud services, but the database they pick is invariably something like a MySQL or Postgres, which is not cloud native, or databases that people are already using are databases like Oracle SQL Server DB2, which were made before the cloud era, right? So we're here trying to modernize the database and offer the database as a service things around it. So, enterprises and various companies can easily and quickly build their applications with velocity and put their features into the market and have them run without much pain.
Love it. And look, our audience is a technical audience. They, of course, know HBase and Cassandra and all of the great tools that came out of that Facebook, lab at that point as Facebook was achieving hyperscale.
Yeah.
And now, if you don't mind, just a little bit of the kind of cloud native aspect. We were talking, you guys were recently in Detroit at KubeCon, Cloud Native Con. Maybe a little of the cloud native story here.
Absolutely. I'll actually start, you referenced Facebook. I'll start from there, the couple of anecdotes to, kind of show the lessons learned and why we're doing this, right? So at Facebook, we started building Apache Cassandra first when we had to, kind of host the inbox search data. So people couldn't search through their messages. And there were 150 million messages being exchanged per day at the time. And every message had a bunch of different words, right? Anybody writes to anybody, they write some text. And every word had to be indexed for every person sending and receiving the message, right? So that was a lot of writes, and it had to live across data centers, all of that stuff. So cloud native at the time meant it had to be available. You can't have people babysit it. You can't run it on premium hardware. Even if a region goes down, it should reasonably be available, right? That was the point. And we said, there was no database that could do it at the time. So we built one, know that as Apache Cassandra. But we said, in the CAP theorem, we have to compromise on something. We compromised on consistency. We said, it's okay. If somebody couldn't find their messages, we reindex it, right? But, pretty soon, Facebook reinvented messaging itself into what is now known as Messenger. And when we started, building up to Messenger to release it, we said, it's not just the search index. It's writes, it's chat, it's SMS, it's anything that's being sent from anybody to anybody. And we simply could not predict what the usage would be once this product came out because it didn't exist. And we knew that our product engineers, designers being really good would make it a very sticky tool, but we still didn't have a clue as to what to expect. So we said, we have to build this infrastructure that can grow and shrink as needed. And you can't make it super large on day one. It's too expensive. And what if it doesn't take off? And you can't say after it starts taking off, okay, look, give me 6 months, we'll come back and really scale this to how you need it. Can't do that. It has to be something that's ready to go, but yet nimble and quick enough to scale on demand, right? So we ended up building HBase, and after we had fully rolled out and gotten everything under control, the new product went from 150 million messages per day to 20 billion messages per day. And it still kept going up after that. It just kept growing, right? Like crazy. And that was just one of multiple 10 or 20 different applications that we ended up putting on the system. We had many petabytes of data, thousands of servers under management. So we also learned that to be able to run this thing on commodity where things can fail and a lot of failures can happen, and in the cloud-like topology, you needed to have certain aspects of the database. Like you cannot have somebody react to a failure in order to unblock a user from gaining access to their messages or whatever data they have. So from there, if you derive the cloud native aspects of a database, it really comes down to a few things. It comes down to be available no matter you're doing a software upgrade, you're doing a security patch, you're doing, like, for example, a node fails or a zone fails, you still have to be available. So availability and zero downtime, that's a very critical aspect. The second aspect is scale. We talked about, scale on a dime. Don't right size it early, and don't say you can't do it when the time comes. You should be able to scale dynamically without taking down or doing a lot of surgery. And the third aspect that has grown since is, if you look at the public clouds, there's about 200 different regions where they have data centers, whereas in the old days, it used to be 2, or if you're lucky, 3. That was about it. So now you really have to think about how you piece and partition data and push it to different regions, and that need constantly changes, right? As we started building out more data centers in Facebook, we saw that need too. So it's really those 3 aspects, I'd say, and along with make it easy to operate, because your scale not just in the size of any one workload, but the number of workloads also keeps increasing, right? So always available, scale, move data around, and make it easy to run. So those are really the underpinnings of cloud native from the database speak, at least.
Sure, absolutely. And everyone throws around this term hyperscale and all of that. What was it, 20 billion a day?
Yeah.
That's scale.
That's hyperscale. Yeah. The funny thing about Facebook, when they build a product and they first test it out, they roll it out to maybe 5,000, 10,000, and then 1 million. And then it's like, okay, let's roll it out to everybody. And everybody is like 2 billion. So that's a lot of zeros.
Yeah, it is. It gives it a whole new word. So, Karthik, you recently have been talking about a concept you call, and if I get it wrong, I apologize, correct me, DevSec Data Ops.
Yep.
Talk to us about that.
All right. So here goes, right? So DevOps was really, at least this is my view of the elephant, right? Like, if I have some things missing, please do correct. But DevOps was born mostly to tell people the importance of not just building and throwing it over the wall, but to really think about how do you run it to the developer, and to the operator to think about how do you codify your operations to involve more developer-like practices. So version control, infrastructure as code. Think about these things, because it's not the last time somebody's going to be throwing something over, and it's not the last time you're going to be rolling something out. It's actually a very repetitive process. And, the reasons that make it repetitive, obviously, are this whole cloud native thing, where in the application world, you have to keep doing CI/CD and building and running very quickly, or expand into new regions or new clouds or all of that stuff, right? Or build a new service or whatever, right? So that was the genesis of DevOps, I think. And, people started putting the sec into DevOps, primarily to point out, look, you can't just expect all of this to get done and then think, okay, now how do I secure this thing, right? Because it may actually be that the security has to break down some of those practices and also be built into this fabric, right? Rather than built on top of this fabric. So, DevSecOps started coming up mostly to tell people, look, it is something you have to consider upfront, right? But I think in putting those together, I think we've done a good job at, earmarking those communities to come together, et cetera. One of the things we forget, or I see people forget, is like they try to make data invisible, right? Like, and it's great to get started. Like, I don't want to know where my data is. I just want my models and I can build my application. So dev is empowered. But the reality is, as the business starts to get more data driven, all businesses are trying to do that, the data architecture starts to get more important. And that starts to now be something, just like security was before, it starts to be something that slows people down after a little bit of, a runway to execute. It then slows people down to have to re-architect, right? So it's just, the concept is just to think about data also, because after all, if you are going data driven, it's important to be data first also in your design, right? Like, and not ignore that.
Agreed. We talked a little off camera, and I was telling you, I've been putting on the DevSecOps event at RSA conference now this year, this April. I think will be the 7th or 8th year.
Wow. Nice.
We didn't always call it DevSecOps. We called it rugged DevOps. We called it all different things, right? And we settled on DevSecOps, 5-6 years ago. Not because I particularly loved it, but I realized that that's what the security community, and that's what the RSA conference is, a security show. That's what they needed. They wanted to make sure that security was right in the middle of it.
Yep.
Right? That people realized security was important. It wasn't an afterthought.
Yep.
And that we need to build security in. Now, my personal opinion was that DevOps had that from the beginning. It wasn't just purely dev and ops. It was all of this built in doing it right.
Yep.
That we really didn't necessarily, from a DevOps perspective, need to stick second there. But if that's what it took to get that mindset, small price to pay. Do it. I would do it every time.
Yep.
I think it's the same thing here with DevSec data ops, right? I think what we've seen over the last, year and a half, is that people are, hey, stupid, it's about the data, right? We almost lost fact. We get so hung up on developing applications and our infrastructure, and for too long the database was a bit of a redheaded stepchild, right? And the whole data, not so much data scientists, but the data storage, data analysis, it was always secondary.
Yep.
Right, first I got to make sure I have the infrastructure for it. Secondly is my application and interfaces and all of that right. Only recently have we really remembered the old adage that data is king.
Yep, completely. Yeah.
Taking care of that data, securing that data is job one. Right? Without the data, we don't have nothing. So if calling it DevSec data ops is what it takes for us to put data top of mind here, again, I say it's a small price to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like trying to make it pithy to remember what are the different significant aspects to think about when starting some new project or even revamping an existing project, right? These are all the different dimensions to think about, right? So,
So let's talk a little bit now where kind of rubber meets the road here with what you're doing with Yugabyte around this.
So we talked about how Yugabyte is building cloud native, right? And at its core, the cloud native movement is almost like, the synonymous with DevOps in some sense, right? Like when it started. Yep. And the reason's because, firstly, the cloud is failure prone. I mean, if you look at the fundamental tenets of what the cloud gives you, right? The advantage it gives you is it gives you all of this infrastructure that it can provision and give for you in a couple of minutes. And I'm sure, at least I remember, I'm sure you do, but maybe some of our listeners may not remember the days when it took many, many months to rack and stack to a point where actually ordering and getting operational machines was singularly the biggest pole in the tent. It was just used to dictate everything. I remember times at Facebook, even for when building Apache Cassandra, we used to order the machines before we had built the database, and we'll figure it out. How many machines? I don't know, but we'll.
Hey, look, I made a living doing that. Right in the .com days, I helped put together a company that was. Back then, we called it an ASP, application service provider. Huh? There was no cloud. We operated data centers, and we, racking and stacking servers is what we did, right?
Exactly.
And trying to get density and, one use servers, two use servers.
That's right. And
EMC symmetrics machine. That was a job.
Wattage of the rack and all.
Oh, remember all that? Yeah, power, ping, and pipe.
Exactly.
Yeah. This generation, people who grew up, in a cloud native world, they don't know from that.
Yeah, you just order maybe 100 machines and
it's spin it up.
You just spin it up. That's it, right? So now that barrier has gone away, right? If it took you a year to, get your 100 machines, you could do a lot in a year or even 9 months, 6 months, whatever it is, right? But if you can do it in 5 minutes, you really can't do much in 5 minutes. So that whole bottleneck is gone, right? So the next bottleneck that it immediately falls on is now that you have your servers, how quickly can you stand it up in order to utilize it on one side? And on the other side, how quickly can you build your application and start sending your features out so it can be utilized, right? And so that gives birth to all of the CI/CD and your, infrastructure as code, all of those type of principles, which is really at the heart of DevOps. And what we do at Yugabyte is build a database with all of the features and functionality of a well-loved database, the most loved database, in fact, which is Postgres. And we retain everything. So to the point where, as a developer, you don't even have a mental model shift. You pretty much go from Postgres to Yugabyte knowing 80% of what Yugabyte does, because it is literally the upper half of Yugabyte is Postgres code, right? But the lower half and the architecture, we changed it to enable cloud native, which means you don't have to be like, if you release your application on top of this database instead of Postgres, you don't have to architect. How do you make it available? You don't need that standby to promote. You don't need that load balancer. You don't need to keep adding and removing IP addresses, and you don't need all of that magic. It's just taken care of for you, right? Similarly, when your scale increases with the Postgres days or any traditional database, you have to increase the size of your server. So you have to go from a medium-sized server to a large size server, and you have to actually make that physical move and either reattach the disk or copy over the data and switch over your application. And that takes both work. Even if it's automated, you still need people to do that because you don't want to make mistakes. And it takes downtime because you have to switch over the application and copy data, which takes time, right? Whereas with Yugabyte, Yugabyte DB, the database, what we do is you can simply add a node into the cluster, and magically in the background, it will start moving and shuffling the data while your application is still functional, and leverage, instead of your 3 nodes, it's now going to go to 4 or 5 or 6. It's going to start using bigger and bigger pools of clusters. You can scale up or scale out, whatever it is, we give the flexibility without impacting your application, right? So these are a couple of examples of the ways we build into the DevOps movement, right? And so if you're thinking, CI/CD, fast velocity deployment, ability to, run this on the cloud and secure this and be able to do that 24/7, thinking about things like how do you do, say, nightly backups for the last 8 days and with encryption, with a particular encryption key that's rotated every month. All of these things we can make really simple because, once again, the database and the database as a service software around the management software were all born in the cloud era, right? Built for the cloud.
Agreed. Excellent. You know what? I'm just looking here at the time, saying that was a quick 15 minutes. Well, it's probably it's a quick 20 minutes. We got to wrap up, Karthik. People want to get more information. Where can they go?
A few different places. Firstly, our website, yugabyte.com, right? That's obviously a starting point to help guide people. Secondly, I would say we are a very inviting and very big open source project. So our community Slack, so yugabyte.com/Slack, which is free to join. We have about 7,000 plus people in there, asking all interesting questions, discussing interesting things. So that would be a great place to jump in.
Sure.
And thirdly, our documentation online is a great source. Our social media is active, across Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. So yeah, number of different ways. Or get a hold of me on Twitter, and I'm happy to route also.
Absolutely. Hey, let's make sure you guys get back here regularly and we keep up. I mean, it's a great story. The OpenDB, the whole. This whole data ops movement and as we call it, DevSec, data ops, it's something our audience is interested in. Let's make sure we talk more. Until then, though, best of luck.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. This is great. And we'll do this. We'll do this sometime again, regular updates on these things. Yeah, this is great.
I appreciate it. All right. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong. Go check out yugabytes.com, the Yugabyte DB. We'll be back in a minute. This Techstrong TV. We'll be back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Techstrong TV. Glad you're joining us. I'm really happy to have as my guest for this next segment my friend Kevin Thompson. If you don't know, Kevin is the CEO of Tricentis. If you don't know about Tricentis, he's going to tell you about it. We work with Tricentis quite a bit here. fantastic company. We love working with them. But they also are really good at what they do, and Kevin's going to talk to you about it. Hey, Kevin, welcome back. I hope all is well with you.
Things are going great, and thanks for having us again.
My pleasure. So, Kevin, before we jump into today's news, or news that we want to discuss today, for people maybe who aren't familiar with Tricentis, just a quick kind of catch me up.
Yeah, so quick history of Tricentis. Tricentis is today the leader in continuous test automation for the enterprise. So as you think about building software applications, you think about buying and deploying software applications and doing that across large scale environments, we have the best set of technologies and the best team in the world to help you be able to do that. We're the fastest growing company in the space, and now one of the largest companies in the space, soon to be the largest company in the test automation space. And we've got a much larger vision of who we want to be over the next 2 or 3 years. So as we think about how you build, buy, deploy high quality software applications, how do you make sure those applications meet the needs of your business and actually deliver the business outcomes you intended to have them deliver when you invested in them? We think there's a software quality journey that test automation sits at the center of. But ultimately, we want to provide a lot of capabilities to developers, DevOps teams, IT ops teams, IT development teams, IT testing teams that allow them to think about that quality journey really from the inception of the idea of a piece of technology to the point in that time that technology is released into the operations environment. So big vision that we have, and some of the things we'll talk about today are how we're beginning to accelerate our innovation engine, be able to deliver on that bigger story that we believe our customers desperately need. We think they need a lot more capabilities than they have today that are available today to make sure we're delivering high quality applications to our businesses.
Absolutely. The only thing I'd add to that, Kevin, is this transcends even Tricentis, right? Tricentis is sort of the messenger, the vessel. But making test automation and speeding up this ability to deliver quality software, that's the mission, right? That's what has to be at the center of stuff. And if Tricentis, is the messenger or the person, helping to fulfill that mission, that makes you guys successful. But we need this done as an industry, as a world, right? In terms of what we do today with software.
It's critical. If you think about how fast we're building technology today, how fast we're deploying technology today.
Yep.
Capabilities don't exist yet to really support that at the level it needs to be supported. So we are every day putting our businesses at risk because we're putting technology in the hands of users that we're not 100% confident is going to do what it was intended to do the way it was intended to do it. And if we want to move even faster, we got to come up with more ways than we have today, provide that assurance of quality. And you're right. The key is how do we make sure that the software applications we are using, that our customers are using, are the level of quality they need to be. And quality encompasses performance. It encompasses, does it do what it's supposed to do? Is the data correct? Is the data moving the way it needs to? It includes security. So it's a really broad concept.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, both you and I come from the security world, right? And for a long time we've been preaching that security has to be synonymous with quality.
Yeah.
And that's, we've built up this sort of bifurcation, or there's this Chinese wall between software quality and testing, the kind of which Tricentis has built their business around, and then security testing. Like It's a separate animal, it's a different species, but it's not other. They're very, very closely linked like this. And I look forward to the day that,
we're working on it. We have a big vision. We got to bring that vision to reality.
I'm here to help. I mean, that's truth right there. Anyway, hey, I appreciate this. Let's jump into the news. We've got some major product kind of announcements from Tricentis you're going to share with us, I hope.
I am. Yeah, we have really worked hard over the last 15 to 18 months to get our innovation engine running much faster than we've ever had it run in the past. And it's been a lot of work, but the teams have done just a phenomenal job of rethinking how we build technology, where we build technology, how we deliver technology, and have accelerated the rate at which we're able to do that. So as a result, we have a lot of new technology that's hitting the market in the fourth quarter. I'll talk about that today, but just a little bit of a teaser. We have a lot of great new technology that's going to hit the market in the first quarter that I'm not quite ready to talk about yet. So I want to make sure that the dates are solid, but I'm 99% confident they are. So you're going to see a lot of new capabilities coming from us over the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, as that innovation engine we've been working to build really kicks into high gear. So really 3 great
Let's
new
not
products.
do anything that's going to get us in trouble.
We won't. That's why I teased it.
It's a tease. All right. Well, what can we give our audience today?
So we have 2 brand new products that are going to hit the market in this quarter. Some of them are in open beta right now. Some are actually already in the market. And then we have a major new release of one of our existing products that has already happened in the fourth quarter that I want to talk about today. So let's start with the product we've had in market that we put in a major new release this quarter. So we have a product called Neoload. For those of you who don't know, Neoload is a performance testing product. So testing the performance of business applications under different levels of load, and a really, really great modern product that has been designed for modern application environments. So whether you're testing web-based applications or on-premise applications, whether they're custom or whether they're packaged, whether they're cloud native, hybrid, or on-premise, we have a really great product that thinks about performance testing and the way applications should perform in the way you're building those modern application environments. But we've released this quarter a new capability we call Real Browser, which allows us to do browser-based testing and allows you in those web-based application environments, whether it's an application that is completely web-based or connected to a bunch of other environments, on-premise, hybrid, allows us to test that much more effectively at a much higher rate of speed than we could in the past. It really is the last major piece, and you're never done with a piece of software, as you know, but it's the last major piece of functionality we believe we needed to add to meet the demands of our customers to be able to really test the performance of the application environments they're building. So really excited about it. It's a capability that has been a long time in development. Neoload became a part of Tricentis back in April of 2021, but this is something that team had been working on for several years prior to the combination. So it's a culmination of a lot of hard work, of a vision that the Neoload team had of how do we bring performance testing to the modern application world? How do we give all those development teams that are building cloud native, web-based applications the tools they need to make sure they know exactly how these applications are performing and how they should perform, so that one, where we need to make adjustments to improve performance, we can, but even more importantly, once those applications are in production, we know how they should be behaving so that when they're not, we can address those issues so our customers aren't impacted. So really exciting piece of functionality that we've released, major move for us in the performance load testing capabilities that we have.
So let me just make sure I've got this straight for our audience. This is available now, or it's coming in Q4?
It's available now. So we
right
released
now.
it. Right now, you can add it to if you're a customer of ours using Neoload, we've told you about it, and you've got the ability to try it, and then you can add it to the product that you're using. And then when you buy Neoload now, Neoload comes with Real Browser. So if you're buying Neoload and you're a brand new customer, you're going to get this capability that didn't exist before.
Fantastic, man. That's great. Good stuff.
Really excited about that. It's been a lot of hard work. As you know, when you think about performance testing, that hybrid and cloud native web-based application environment requires a different approach than just a traditional on-premise application, and a very different approach than a packaged on-premise application. And while we had the ability to provide you some visibility into performance, we could do some level of testing. This really moves us to a much higher level than what we could provide before.
Absolutely. I mean, look, our audience is technical. They understand this, Kevin. But I just want to kind of tie the bow on this, right? When you're looking to do performance testing on cloud-based apps, it's really the sky's the limit, right? Because how much performance am I going to need? What are my use cases here in terms of loads and so forth? I mean, Do I test 80% of capacity, 120% of my projected capacity, right? It was one thing when I had servers on a rack and I knew exactly how many servers I had.
Yeah.
With the cloud, man, that could, that could bump up 20%, 40%, right? And no one wants to do that kind of bump without making sure the darn thing's going to work, right?
It's one of the big risks we have is that you can expand compute capacity so easily now, but so many of the applications we're using, we haven't really tested them at that level of load, at that level of scale. And then they break, and we're like, uh-oh, now what do I do? And if you've already committed to that level of scale, then you have a real challenge. This new capability we just released helps you really manage all of that.
Beautiful. Great stuff. And congratulations to the team. As you said, they were working on it, I think, before the Tricentis merger or acquisition, and glad to see it finally coming out
really
here.
Excited about it. The former CEO, Neil Ode, who runs my business performance team now, this is something he's wanted for a very long time. He's kind of head over heels with excitement that we've got it in market, as the rest of the organization. So that's one great new set of capabilities we put in market. And then we have two brand new products that I want to talk about. And the first one I want to talk about is a product we call Tricentis Test Management for Jira. So it's a test management product that runs on Jira, really aimed at development teams and DevOps teams that need some basic level of test management that needs to be used across their entire team, that can be deployed very, very quickly, that can be used very easily, that's cloud native, and allows them to continue to move at the speed they need to move while getting more control of their processes. I talked to one of our very large customers a few weeks ago who's got a 400-person development team, not a single tester in the team. And his developers are doing all of the testing, which is a pretty aggressive approach. A lot of teams are doing where the developers are doing a lot of the testing. He's done it where the developers are doing all of the testing. And he said, we need something to help us manage that whole process, but that moves at the speed we're moving, which is a different speed, need a different set of capabilities than traditional test management products provide. And we've got a great test management product in Qtest, but wasn't really designed for those teams. And so now we have both the ability, if you're a large team doing very complicated testing and you need a really robust test management product, Qtest is a phenomenal product that allows you to do all of that. But now we have what we call TTM for Jira for those development teams that need something a little more lightweight that allows them to move at the speed they want to move, but still get control over a process that has been a bit uncontrolled. And we were able to leverage all the knowledge we have about test management in building TTM for Jira. So we believe even a V1 is as good as any other product in the market that has been designed for those development teams. And because of the deep knowledge and long history we have, we've got a pretty aggressive roadmap that we think will make TTM for Jira the leading Jira plugin from a test management point of view in a very, very short window of time.
Excellent. I've got some questions on. So first of all, when you say it runs on top of Jira, it's a plugin or it's a standalone thing that's talking via API?
So it's a plugin to Jira. So it runs on top of Jira, and you buy it through the.
So it's really easy through the marketplace. And show me an organization that hasn't kind of skimped over the years in building up their test team. Right. Unfortunately,
it's when you look at budgets, and look, I'm a guy who looks at budgets every day, all day. It's sometimes the area we believe we can afford to go skinny, even though we probably intellectually know better. By bringing capabilities like this to market, and we'll bring others that really help development teams and DevOps teams be able to move at speed, but move at speed with a much lower level of risk than they're moving at today. And to your point, it's about quality, but we have to deliver technology at speed because that's what the world demands right now.
They're not going to wait for you.
So how do you get quality at speed? And in order to do that, you've got to build technologies designed to provide quality at speed.
So I have two minds on this. Number one, something's better than nothing, right? Because before this, you had, you winged it, right? You had full-on developer teams trying to do testing, and you could imagine, right, how much of priority and the coverage they got there. Number two, though, is it's also an on-ramp, right? You use a product like this, and then you start realizing, what a full-on a Q test or something like that could give you. And you say, okay, you know what? I've been using the Jira version of it here, right? The Jira. I'm ready to move. We're growing. I'm ready to grow my testing.
Exactly.
As well.
And so teams matter, right? And as you get more mature, you're going to want a more robust set of tools and solutions to help you think about that quality journey you're on. But when you're moving fast, relatively immature still maybe in your testing approach, your quality assurance approaches, this gives you a tool that doesn't feel like it requires a lot of effort, but yet gives you a lot more control over the process, which we need. It's control of the process for development teams is really important. And it's a process that's been a bit uncontrolled for the last 7 to 10 years.
I think maybe longer even.
Maybe.
But you know what? The good news is, look, Jira is so widely used. This brings this to a whole new class of user. You don't have to be a huge enterprise to reap the benefits of a Tricentis.
Exactly. It's really easy to deploy.
Quality.
Yeah, really easy to deploy, very easy to use, very inexpensive. It's got the basic capabilities that you need. And it's been designed specifically with developers in mind and DevOps teams in mind. So we've thought about their workflows and how they do their work, how they do development, how they want to do testing. And we spend a lot of time talking to them. And we think we brought a product to market that really meets their needs, is going to allow them to work the way they want to work without forcing them to work in a way that, one, they don't enjoy. And, developers, if they don't enjoy it, they won't do it.
Yep.
And two, it won't slow them down.
Excellent.
And then the third product is similar. I'm really excited about. One of the things that we believe, and we've been working on this for the last year, is we believe there are a lot of different types of teams in technology today that are responsible for applications that need to be tested, where quality matters. But in many cases, the solutions that existed in the market were not designed specifically with the context and needs and knowledge of the applications those teams are responsible for. So we got a great new product that we're bringing into market in the fourth quarter, which is we call Tricentis Test Automation for Salesforce. So it's a product that's specifically designed for Salesforce development teams and admins that are building and deploying Salesforce, that are building, as you know, a lot of other applications on top of
I know Salesforce is a platform.
It's a platform.
The different apps that Kevin, in 1999, IBM paid the company I had helped put together to build out, don't laugh at me, on Lotus Notes. We were building apps. I remember that too. All right. So we were building apps on top of Notes. Then Microsoft came to us and asked us to build apps on top of Exchange. We never got to that. Notes became Domino server on IBM, and it was really an app server. The platform, this is not a new concept. Salesforce, of course, has killed it, right? They're the champions. But their platform allows you to build anything. And so many of these apps are built with this low-code, no-code kind of tools and stuff like that, where quite frankly, I don't know what kind of testing they do, right? They spin these things up and set them free, right? And then you find out
they don't do enough because they haven't had a set of tools that allow them to do it.
There hasn't been any.
And so there's a lot of manual testing in that space. And you're right, the number of integrations and capabilities that we put on top of Salesforce is actually quite astounding. Every time I meet a new company and I go look at what they've done, they've all done something different in customizing the way Salesforce is connected to their product, the way it's connected to their financial systems, the way it's connected to their marketing systems, the way it's connected to their support systems. And there's not been any great technology in the market that allows you, with the context and knowledge of how Salesforce works, to be able to really test all of that and ensure that the level of risk is low, that all of those capabilities you're building and you're releasing into the wild are actually going to work, they were intended to work. And because, I guess, if you look back to where Salesforce came from, initially Salesforce wasn't viewed as this business enterprise critical application because it was just sales and they had the whole message of no IT and just deploy it. That's no longer who they are. They're the largest enterprise application software vendor in the world, and with a tremendous amount of technology and applications sitting on top of their platform. So that's why we felt like it was really important to bring this capability to market. And there are other applications like that have become platforms that we believe application specific, platform specific context is really important, and a design that has been built based on the needs of that Salesforce admin user, that Salesforce developer, because that person is different and they have different needs than someone who's implementing another large scale application or someone who's building custom web native, web facing applications. And so we do believe there's a big gap, and there's a number of applications big enough that are enough of a platform. We need to bring this context specific technology to market. So super excited about it. And it's cloud native, it's lightweight, once again, very easy to use. And we've made it relatively inexpensive because we know those teams are just part of an overall testing approach. You still need Tosca, you still need Neoload, you still need Qtest, but now you need this for Salesforce. And we got to make sure that when you add all that together, the economics make sense to our customers.
Sure. But it's too big a platform market to ignore, number one. And number two, we used to say, the apps, like you said, the apps you build in Salesforce or with low-code, no-code tools, they're simple apps. They're not so simple. Yeah. People are building crazy scalable stuff on these platforms now.
You should try to change some of it, which I've done. It's really complicated.
No, I hear you. Anyway, hey, this is great. So let me just get it straight, though. Salesforce will be out in Q4.
Yep.
The Salesforce product. The Jira product is out now, or that's also
Jira product
Q4?
Is out now, and the Neoload with Real Browser is out right now.
Is out now as well.
Yeah.
And we can
Both
get them all from going...
Tricentis.com.
Tricentis.com, we can get the whole scoop on them right there.
You can go to Tricentis.com and get the whole scoop on them. There's lots of great content and knowledge about those. You can go to the Jira, the Atlassian Marketplace, also see TTM for Jira. So lots of different ways to see the products, play with the products. All of those products have great trials. So if you're a customer of ours or not a customer of ours and you want to come try them before you buy them, we encourage you to do that. We made that really easy.
Kevin, thanks. I appreciate you. I know you guys are crazy busy over there.
It was good talking to you again.
It's good talking to you. You did tease.
I did. We'll talk again in the first quarter.
First of the year, I'm looking for you. Okay.
All right, I'll be ready.
All right. Tricentis.com. Go check it out. Great new products for Jira, Neo, and then we have the Salesforce coming in Q4. We're going to take a break on Techstrong. We'll be right back.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, we're at BMC Exchange and we're talking about application modernization. We've been talking about this concept since the first terminal emulator showed up on a PC. So what is different about application modernization today than we've been talking about for the last 3 decades?
Yeah, I think that's the one constant in IT and in life, right? Is things are always changing. So we're always going to be talking about modernization. So if you and I are still chatting in 5 years from now, you'll be asking me the same question. But what I would say today, right? So what's different today is some of the tools and processes are continuing to evolve, right? We've been talking about agile development for a long time. We've been talking about modern CI/CD pipelines and how organizations are doing continuous integration and continuous deployment. And the tools that they're using to do that, continue to change. So regardless of what platform you're on, if you're on the mainframe platform, increasingly, organizations want to be doing things, in a consistent way, in a standard way across all their platforms, and the mainframe is included in that. That's the biggest difference, I think, versus when we were chatting 5 years ago, right? Each of the different platforms had different approaches, very different processes. That's probably the biggest change that I would say when we talk about modernization today.
So are we going to see a consistent set of DevOps processes across all those platforms? Is that the ultimate goal?
Yeah, I think it really is. I think in terms of the best practices around developing and deploying and delivering software, those processes are the same, whether you're talking about the application that's on our mobile device or the back-end processing that might be running on a mainframe platform or a middleware platform. The same processes are tried and true, right? And so they want to use those same types of processes so that they have a consistent, great user experience. And that's really why you see such a push around standardization of the tools and processes, because it's about delivering the best outcome to whatever their end client happens to be.
Mm-hmm. Do we have too many specialists for all the different platforms? And that kind of, when you think about it, is what raises the cost of IT, is that we just have so many different types of people that we need to get, and maybe we need to just simplify some things.
Yeah, I think that there's always a desire to simplify things, but I think there is always going to be something new and different, right? That's always going to be the case. So I think the challenge is, how do we incorporate the new, and how do we do it in a way that we can assimilate that into some of our existing processes and or begin to change some of those processes so they're better able to adapt new technologies or different ways of working than how we do it today, right? Because there's always going to be something new and different. You're always going to need, some expertise in that new area. But then how do we manage that? How do we control that in a similar fashion?
You at BMC kind of support both distributed computing platforms and mainframes, so you don't necessarily have a dog in the race on either side. But on the mainframe side, from what you've seen, what is it that leads people to want to modernize the application versus leave the mainframe? What are the decisions that go into that?
Yeah, I think it's a few things, right? So one, and you and I've had this conversation before, when we think about today's business service and applications, to think of it as existing in one platform really isn't the case, right? So the individuals and teams that are involved in delivering today's modern applications to business services, whether you're talking about your insurance application, you're looking up and handling a claim on your phone, whether you're checking your where's your seat on the airplane, or you're depositing a check by taking a photo with your phone. All of those have obviously a mobile application, but they all have a back-end application that runs on the mainframe. So our clients look at how do we continue to create the best user experience, that's the front end, how you and I interact with it, but at the same time make that seamless so that we can seamlessly interact with our systems of record that might reside in the mainframe, they might be on a distributed environment, or some of the systems of records for some applications might be in the cloud. So how do we interact with that in a way that's seamless for that end user experience and manage that effectively? That's what clients are really interested in. How do we continue to do that in a way that enables us to bring new capabilities to our clients more rapidly than we've ever done it before?
Do you think the economy and the cyclical factors play a role in deciding what platform to stay with and modernize? Because we are in a downturn, and if I already have a mainframe, maybe I should get more out of it.
I think short answer is yes. I think it does have an impact, right? I think when we're in a downturn, right, when there's in a recession, I think the appetite for what I'll call really large-scale transformational projects shrinks, right? So what they're looking for is, okay, what are some of the incremental changes I can make that can help me achieve the business outcome that I want? And more often than not, it's the types of things I was just describing. They're looking at really from the application perspective, what do I need? Well, I might need to change, what and how the user is interacting, right? What capabilities I'm providing them. But that's maybe around the data that's there, the data entry, the interface, but I don't need to change the entire back office system, right? I don't need to change the systems of record. So I think that is something that organizations have found they've been able to do quite well over the last 5 years, which is why, when we talk about the mainframe survey that BMC does every year, we saw the largest, 95% of the respondents, over 1,300 worldwide, said that the mainframe has the strongest, healthiest outlook that we've ever seen in the 17 years we've been surveying clients. And I think that's why they see that you know what, they can have a little bit of their cake and eat it too. They can bring new capabilities, on whatever input-output device they want to use to their clients, but maintain the integrity and the security of the systems of record, which may be residing on a mainframe.
A lot of the data that we're also using in these larger enterprises resides on the mainframe, and data has gravity, so does that factor into the thought process too? Because everybody I ever talked to said, the minute you want to move an application somewhere, you got to move the data, and moving data is a career-threatening decision.
Right. Yeah. No, I think absolutely. I think that, if I were to open up my crystal ball, one of the things that I think that we'll see that may change over the next few years is absolutely around data gravity. So for many years, many organizations have been taking the system of record data, and they've been moving it, transforming it, ETL type processing to other platforms where they're doing analytics. I think increasingly we're seeing organizations looking at, how can they do analytics on the platform, maybe eliminate some of that ETL processing, that data duplication, if you will. So I think that's something that, won't surprise me if we see more of that type of workload actually running on the mainframes today versus moving it off the platform.
What has been the level of adoption of DevOps in those mainframes environments? Because, a lot of people run out there and say, old dogs won't learn new tricks, but maybe they do. And what are you seeing?
Yeah, a couple of things I would say. As you said, we're here in Miami at the BMC Exchange event, and I was talking with a client, two different clients this morning. One received an innovation award for their DevOps implementation. Mainframe environment, and they shared their story in less than 18 months. They are light years ahead of the kind of capabilities they had a year ago as a development organization. And then a few hours ago, I talked to one who is just in the early stages of their DevOps journey, right? So, they built an architecture team. They're looking at the DevOps best practices, and they're consulting and working with us on how they begin their journey. And referencing our mainframe survey, what we see is more than 60% of organizations say they are at some stage in their DevOps journey, right? So that might be in the very beginning stages, or it may be in that we're never ended because it's a continuous journey.
If that's the case, also we hear a lot about AI ops. And where does that fit in this continuum of things? Because a lot of the things that we do today in DevOps might become even more automated than they are today. The goal is always ruthless automation, but
absolutely,
where are we on that curve?
Yeah, AI ops is a little behind DevOps, right? I think AI ops is a little bit behind. We do hear organizations in our survey, I think more than 50% said they are beginning to implement AI ops, right? So a little bit behind. But I think that's an area where organizations absolutely are looking at how can they leverage, AI ops and the promise of, predictive analytics, more predictive automation to help them root out problems and speed up the resolution of problems when they occur within their environment. And the reason for that is the environment is only increasingly complex, right? There's more and more things that are coming into it. So that's why, dynamic discovery of your environment, using AI to help you understand, what normal is, and then when you're out of, normal bounds, help you identify that root cause very quickly.
Are you seeing organizations either put new workloads on mainframes or actually go out and get a mainframe and then deploy that alongside their distributed computing environments? And is the whole thing becoming a lot more hybrid?
Yeah, I think what we see is, organizations, the majority of organizations that have mainframes in their environments, their mainframe ecosystem is growing, right? They're adding more capacity because they have more of their existing workloads are growing. There's more transactions, there's more data. And then most of them are also adding new applications, right? So new front-end applications that drive new back-end requirements. So that's why we see that the ongoing capacity of the mainframe environment increasing. And we also see another client I was talking to today was talking about a recent acquisition. Usually, when we're talking about acquisitions, it's usually a larger organization picking up a smaller organization. And, they will work through the process of taking their existing systems of records and their applications and then bringing them into the new company that they, the mother company, if you will, right? So that creates more growth within that older company or the smaller company, didn't have a mainframe at a core of what they were doing, but now that processing will become part of the larger organization as well.
We're also seeing a lot more Linux on mainframe as the DevOps is big among the open source community. So Is that how some of this stuff initially finds its way into mainframe environments where they start running a Linux workload and then they start playing around with that, and the next thing you know, they're like, hey, there's something here?
Yeah, I think that Linux has been available on the mainframe for many years, as we've been talking about, and there are definitely really strong footholds of Linux and use of Linux One that's growing, and I think we will see more clients, evaluating that, looking at the strengths of the platform, how they can get more availability, using the Linux One platform. So I think that's an area that I expect to see more growth in as well.
Mm-hmm. What's your best advice to people who are making this transition, or otherwise known as the question is, what's that one thing that makes you shake your head every day and go, I can't believe we're still doing this?
Yeah, it's a couple of things, but the one thing I would say is, get some outside expertise. Right? Don't try to do it yourself. Right? Chances are there's other organizations, other areas of expertise that can maybe provide some helpful guidance. Right? Maybe give you a second opinion. Right? And I think that's always a good thing and there's a lot of different areas where you can go and solicit that type of a second opinion.
All right, folks. I think the first mainframe prediction is going to be dead in 10 years was made 40 years ago. So yeah. I suspect that we may be still having this conversation in 40 years from now, but it won't be with us.
It won't be with us.
All right. Thanks, guys, for watching.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey folks, welcome to BMC Exchange. We're going to be talking about ITSM, IT Ops, DevOps, and a little AI Ops thrown in on top. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for being here.
We hear these buzzwords all the time, and they all seem to represent something slightly different. Is this some sort of continuum that we're on, or will all these things converge into something else at some point? And what does our journey look like from here?
Yeah, so my role at BMC, I'm the general manager for the digital service and operations management business. So what does that mean is that within the portfolio, we have IT service management, right? That's a domain that many customers know well. There's also operations management. So that's monitoring, taking actions, alerts, etc., right? So we talk about IT operations, IT service management. Really both domains are being impacted greatly by emergence of DevOps in terms of rapid releases, lots of changes impacting the environment, which introducing a lot of tickets on service management into ITSM, and also a lot of alerts and alarms into operations management. So the DevOps adoption, particularly in enterprise companies, are really impacting the practitioners and how ITSM and IT operations are being run and impacting obviously the tools that are being used.
So it's going to be a combination of things. It almost seems like it's a cultural clash as well, because we have DevOps folks who are very programming minded, and then we have ITSM folks who tend to be more of the IT administrators, and they tend to have graphical tools that they use to manage things. So what are the cultural challenges that you're seeing customers deal with?
Right, you're right. When you say DevOps tend to be more dev than ops, typically when people are organizing those teams, that they actually have one distinct culture, and their culture usually is around speed, right? Incremental, small changes and roll them out quickly. Versus traditionally IT change, CAB change advisory boards, they're a lot more when things UI oriented, but also process oriented and ITIL process, etc. And then the third group have a slightly different culture again is operations teams. They want to control the environment, fewer releases, the continuous changes impacting, they feel a little bit of lose of control, sense of control. Those three different groups have distinct kind of way of operating and what's important to them. The first one is speed, the second one is understand the customer user experience and change management, and third was operational stability of the environment, right? So these three coming together really is compelled by business need, because at the end, the companies that can roll out functionalities, roll out application, updating their website faster are the ones that's going to be competitive. So all three teams now are working, adjusting, getting used to each other, right? To make sure ultimately that they can roll out things quickly, but manage risk and manage, all these changes going through into this complex environment.
And it's
a lot to adjust.
It's not uncommon for speed and reliability to have some tension against
Absolutely.
each other. So sometimes there are trade-offs there.
Yeah.
You guys at the show were talking about a new release of Helix, the SaaS platform, and at least as I understand it, there's some new visualization capabilities that make it easier for people to kind of see what's going across these cultures. So is that part of the mission statement going forward?
Absolutely. So we're very excited to talk about Helix apostrophe 22, right? We actually want to use the word release loosely because we're adopting continuous delivery. We have monthly pushes into our clients' environments, right, in terms of new capabilities, rapidly rolling them out. So we really talk about Helix is in aggregate all the capability we've made available to customers in the last 6 to 12 months. So in terms of key capabilities, one is the platform. We're absolutely approaching Helix in the platform manner in terms of single layer of data, whether it's ticketing data, change management kind of data, combine them in the same accessibility to the applications on top with log data, metrics data, modeling of your applications, modeling of infrastructure, right? All of that into the Helix platform using a lot of common services. So on top of that, we're very excited to announce a lot of the AI-driven service management capabilities, where there's things like clustering problems, incidents together to make the jobs of the service desk a little bit easier. We have done a significant amount of capabilities in the AI ops world, right? Things like anomaly detection, clustering of events coming in to create individual situations, to be able to recommend automation to be built, to be proactive, addressing those issues. And most importantly, connecting service management and operations management, what we are calling service ops. So what that means is that sending the data, as I mentioned, the common platform, from operations into the service management side of the house. So if you have an incident, you can create an incident in service management. And if the incidents relate to issues, outages, or resources lacking on your infrastructure, we give that recommendation to the team addressing the incident. We give a sense of where do you start, what we think is causing the issue. Just get a bridge immediately to go to a possible root cause can save customers a lot of time and make that triaging, resolution of incident much, much faster. So that end-to-end onto Helix platform. So we've been very busy building this out in the last 12 to 18 months.
What should people expect from AI? Because there's always a lot of fear and loathing anytime you mention AI anywhere. So are we going to see jobs that exist today are going to be eliminated? Or are they going to change over time? Maybe it's going to be more fun to be in IT at the end of the day because maybe I'm not going to be doing as much low-level drudgery as we kind of see today. But what do you think that the outlook looks like?
Well, yeah. So challenging with staffing is a universal problem at this point, right? And interestingly, you mentioned the DevOps, it's more dev than ops. So challenging with staffing on an operations team or service desk team even more so compared to, dare I say, development team sometimes, right? So how do you make the lives of the people on those teams better? The first thing we can do to help them is reduce toil, right? And there's many different forms of toil. You can service desk people are faced with hundreds and thousands of lower priority tickets and trying to figure out which is more important, where do I go first? Or you have operations team faced with tons of alarms and alerts, right? And make sense of them, pulling them together. So AI first is making some of those repetitive toil kind of type of tasks easier just by clustering, removing them. And the second piece is highlighting the things that are really, really important. So for example, on service management, clustering proactive problem management. Or say, here are all the 50 tickets coming in, 25 of them is really around one issue. Highlighting them so draw the eyes, draw the priority of the people to the most important issues, or in the situation of AI ops, to say, okay, here's a alert and alarm, here's impact level. This one's really important, right? That helps reduce so much cognitive sort of processing that's needed today just to get to the realize what is most important. So by reducing the toil of repetitive tasks and putting the most important things in front of the operator's eyes really can help them.
Do you think that will have a material impact on reducing the mean time to remediation? Because there's always going to be incidents there.
Yeah.
The issue is how quickly can I fix them, right?
Right. Well, the first step is hopefully you can prevent things from happening. So you have a zero mean time to remediation, right? So the idea of preventative, you set alert, and different customers have different comfort levels with pre-built automation, right? Some customers say I can let pre-built automation do things like adding memory to containers or adding resource to databases. There's sort of like no lose. I can't majorly cause problems. I'll just have pre-built automation to go with sort of AI ops insights, right? That kind of thing can prevent issues. Now, when there are issues, if you're on any bridge, and I've been on bridges in the past myself as well, the first question is, what happened, right? When did it happen, and what changed at that time, right? So if you can pinpoint to the customer, when did something happen? Because all you know is, there's an outage. But the root cause probably happened an hour, 30 minutes, maybe even 24 hours ago, right? So what changed? What patch got changed? What got updated? What new application capabilities rolled out? What happened? When did that thing happen? And you can sort of associate it with the incident. That will get your resolution so much faster, because a lot of time just trying to figure out what changed.
Right. And it's just like a crime. The last person who saw the victim alive is probably the killer. Right?
Well, yeah. Fair enough. The motivation started a long time ago. Yeah.
As we go along and we think about all this, do you think that IT people will be able to manage much more at a higher level of scale? Because one of the things that we are challenged with is not only are we short-handed, but it seems like we now have monolithic applications, cloud-native applications. There's other stuff coming down the pike, and the environment's more distributed than ever. But we're not adding more people, so it seems like the equation has to give somewhere.
Yeah, I was just talking about it last night with a couple other analysts. Right, I don't think. I mean, it's not a choice. The lives of the IT operations or service desk people is getting complicated because, especially with the kind of clients that BMC work with, right? The fact is there's multi-generation of technology in the environment. They continue to have mainframe. Many of our customers, at the end of the day, the system of record is the mainframe. They have built over the last multiple decades client-server applications, multi-tier applications. I myself worked, 10, 20 years ago, worked with clients on Java-based applications against RDBMS with a UI, and those applications not necessarily going away, even as customer want to refactor them, right? And then, of course, the newer generation of applications are being built either on premises, on public cloud, in microservices architecture, running containers, right? So the fact is, all of these multiple generation applications are coexisting for the foreseeable future, right? Very few companies can say, we're going to completely go into cloud. That's just not going to happen. So from operations perspective, the complexities. You may have product teams, back to the DevOps teams, who are doing rapid releases into the latest technology, but those container microservices application in cloud inevitably are touching or calling data or functionality from the RDBMS, from the mainframe in multiple, in the end-to-end use cases. So the staff, which is not growing, right, of IT, monitoring, running, operating, and dev into this environment is faced with task. How do I manage and run this complicated multi-generational system, if you will, right? and how do I have to get smarter and more efficient, right? This is why we are seeing the domains of observability and AI ops coming to be very, very popular in our customers, because if you are in a leadership role, the only path is to get technology to help you, right? To help your team.
We saw a shift to the cloud, and for IT management tools driven at the beginning of COVID kind of accelerated that process. But I wonder, as we go along here, the amount of data that we're trying to collect to train these AI models is significant. So, does that also force the issue where we're going to put these tools in the cloud because we need to aggregate a massive amount of data to train the AI models to then create the inference engine that automates the process on the other side of it? So is that becoming a major reason why we're seeing all these tools starting to shift up into the cloud?
Well, I think data is part of it. A big part of shifting tools in the cloud is related to what you said earlier about IT staffs not growing, right? So if you are a leader of IT, you say, okay, with my staff, how much can I use the SaaS offering? Because with the SaaS offering, I don't have to worry about hardware and maintenance and upgrades and all of that. The vendor takes care of that for me. So a lot of the pushing to the cloud is that related to the staff shortage. The data piece is important as well, right? Because now if you have a lot of tools, the data is already in the cloud, right? So for example, BMC, Helix, and AIOps, to drive AIOps, we need data from your monitoring system, we need data from your service desk system, within monitoring, your logs, events, and metrics, all of that. It's a lot easier. This data is born in the cloud, just stay in the cloud and do algorithms, right? Occasionally we see very large companies who would actually prefer data being piped back to the data lake on premise because they want to do a lot of collaboration of data across so many different sources. But I would say that the movement towards SaaS, movement to the cloud, a lot has to do with the efficiency of the staff. And once those tools are in the cloud, data is born in the cloud, then people say, why do we need to pipe back? Unless I need to build a gigantic data lake for some reason.
And there's a fine line between a data lake and a data swamp, but that's another topic.
Yes.
As we think about all this stuff, do you perceive that culturally we have some issues because we've been doing this a long time and people get attached to tools and there's a certain amount of inertia that exists. So how do we get people to kind of give up their comfort zone to go do something new and different here? What forces that issue?
Are you saying like the monitoring tools or
just the move to the cloud in general, and the notion that we're going to move the control plane for IT essentially into the cloud?
Yeah. Well, what we have seen is as long as the new tools are easier to use and provide more information, right, and make people's daily lives a little bit better, there's not a lot of resistance per se. They say, oh, this tool gives you more information, easier to use, and more intuitive UI or better APIs for me to code against. People generally are fairly quickly adaptable. You can see that just in the last 3 to 5 years, there's even more SaaS-based tools that are being used, growing really, really rapidly. So it's not, I think the technology domain that our customers are very open, actually, to use new tools as long as it is easier to use and make their daily life better. Yeah.
What is your sense of, what's that one thing that you see organizations doing from an IT management perspective that just makes you shake your head and go, I can't believe we're still having this conversation? Is there something you feel like, we got to move this ball forward?
I think a lot of it is a bit of maybe more a process thing than tooling thing. There's a different, I think there's a, customers want to move fast and they're buying tools to move fast, but a lot of times they realize the internal business process, from requirements to making changes, and just it's a human element as opposed to technology element. Oftentimes it's harder to change, right? They see a great demo from BMC or from other vendors, say we want to use that tool, but then the business processes have not changed enough.
Do you think people get that? It seems to me every business process has a corollary IT process and vice versa. So do you think people understand that these things are really now joined at the hip in this age of digital transformation?
Yeah, I think it's evolving, right? Many companies now form the product teams, right? So on a product team, you have the business owner, right? Sometimes you have the product manager writing requirements, development and release and all of that, right? So as these product teams becoming more popular, there is almost inevitable sort of recognition that because there's representation of a development team, release and operations all the way into deep into the ops aspect of IT, but also have linkage into the business, whether it's someone coming from marketing, from finance, whatever needs to be built. Then just the organic conversation within those teams, people realize, oh, okay, I want to do this quickly. I want to, and then the technical side of those teams say, wait, we need to get this checklist and change management. We need to set up for monitoring. We need to have disaster recovery plan, performance testing, all of that. The business people are starting to realize some of the processes that just to roll out functionalities quickly. So those product teams are really making a change. They're from a cultural perspective.
So we're having the conversations earlier because I've been in these conversations where the big business plan gets built and we have the whole thing, and then we get to the IT guys and they're like, we'll be ready in 9 months, and everybody goes, well, we got revenue in 3.
Exactly. Exactly. And then you have the conversation, let's break it down, right? What can be accomplished in 3? And that's, the agile and all of that goes into.
Do you think that the relationship between IT and the business is getting better? Because we've been arguing about this for 4 decades now, where there's been this divide and the culture clash that goes with that. But do you think we are getting to the point now where IT and the business are more closely joined at the hip, and maybe there'll even come a day when IT moves faster than the business can absorb?
Oh, absolutely. I think for a lot of companies, that is the case. It's becoming the case, right? Especially as certain part of IT is adopting Agile, if they're adopting successfully, they can roll features and capabilities in faster than, sometimes end users, let's say an application end user facing, end users are used to certain features, laid out, screens, and they're like, okay, what new capabilities can be absorbed, whether by internal employees or customers. But I do think that as newer generations work into the workforce, they're much more both demanding and adapting faster, right? They're demanding, for example, what I call consumer elevated level of user experience, right? They want, for example, adoption of chatbot, adoption of self-service, right? People just don't pick up phones anymore. The most they would do is chat someone. And if you're of a generation that grew up, let's say in Alexa, you're much more comfortable dealing with chatbots, or grew up in IMs, then you're perfectly fine getting services communication with Slack and Teams versus in person. So all of that, they're more demanding experience, but also much more adaptable. So they get applications, they get the continuous new features coming in. So I'm hopeful that as the general population just becoming more technology savvy, then the alignment will get better.
And they're more likely to self-service their own requirements.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, folks. The old adage is, lead, follow, or get out of the way. So pick one. All right. Hey, thanks for coming by the show.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, that was
Take
fun.
care.
The Engineering the Change Scholarship Program offers a life-changing opportunity for a winner from an underrepresented community to change their lives by becoming a full-stack software developer.
The background that you might see that it's a weakness, it's a strength in this field because everyone is constantly looking for people that are going to bring new ideas.
It's an intense 12-week course that is not for the timid.
For real. Who's mastering this right now? Because I sure am not.
So you guys are badass. Like as a class, you guys are crushing it.
You've got to be dedicated. You've got to be ready to do it. Your life has to be ready for it. Follow us as we go through this cohort's Engineering the Change winner on their journey to becoming full-stack engineers.
Say with great power comes great responsibility.
Got to take it down to 3 finalists. Toria, I'm going to ask you, who really kind of stood out for you?
The 3 people that stood out to me the most was Stephanie and another woman named Carly and a man named Donald.
Mitchell, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. Actually, I think those are 3 great candidates, and I mean, you know very well, right, what it takes to go through this process.
Look, I still love good written and oral skills. I like people who can speak well. I like people who really could write well.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you something. To your point about Stephanie, is it Stephanie Sanchez? Yeah, Stephanie Sanchez. Her essay was one of the best essays I've ever read in the 3 or 4 times we've done this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And bring her into
the golden
finals.
buzzer.
So,
she's in.
The 2 other people you mentioned, to me, Carly epitomizes why we do this.
Yeah.
She said something like, her brothers could do it, why couldn't she? Mm-hmm. Right? Wasn't that in the essay?
Yeah. That's something that stuck with me, especially as a woman.
Yeah.
Because I think that for her, she was like, if they can do it and there's not enough women in tech, like she was like, I can do it too. And I love that.
I say send Carly to Hollywood.
Golden buzzer?
Yeah. Donald Bazell, really nice guy. What I liked about his essay is his genuineness. Is that a word?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
being genuine.
He's genuine.
Yeah.
Right? You got it from him. My only caveat on this is he really doesn't have any tech experience.
Yeah.
So if it's your vote and Mitchell, you don't object, I say let's give Donald the last ticket to Hollywood. And those are our 3 finalists for Engineering the Change. Let's bring them in for interviews and pick our winner.
Okay.
Sounds fun.
Sounds
All
good.
right. We'll see you on the next show.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey, welcome back to KubeCon 2020 in Detroit City, Motor City. We're having a great time. I'm filling in for Alan. He stepped away to refresh and get retooled here. And so I have the pleasure of being joined by Shahar Fogel from Rookout. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. We talked in Valencia, enjoyed chatting with each other, and I'm sure a lot of things have changed. We'll get into that. Let folks know about who you are and also who Rookout is.
Cool. So my name is Shachar. I'm the CEO of Rookout. Basically what we do is develop a platform for developer first observability, basically giving observability capabilities to developers in the way and in the places they're used to getting their data from, and enabling them to solve issues much faster, to understand what's going on in their remote environments in a click of a button without the need to write code, without redeployment, and even in production. So actually solving production issues much faster, around 5 times faster than they can today, and giving them, reducing the frustration of debugging or issue resolution for engineers themselves.
Kind of shift left for observability,
exactly,
all the way right to production.
Yeah, and eventually, everyone is telling the story. Even the bigger players that have built great products for ops people, they know that their growth engines are the developers shift left, and everyone's talking about it. It's driving adoption within organizations, both decisions and usage. So, we aim to give them the capabilities, again, for them and not for, taking ops and SRE's products and trying to push it towards the developers.
Yeah, it's kind of a big thing to try to bolt on to a developer's IDE or development environment.
It's, nothing is easy, yeah, that's why we're here, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what's different about observability when you're early in the software process from a developer's perspective. What do they want that maybe not as important when you're all the way in production, or what are the commonalities?
So I think it's very much related to the cloud native world. Cloud native has kind of changed the world, the way you manage software, the way you distribute, the way you monitor and do everything around that. But eventually kind of engineers have been left behind, and the change that happened in the industry is also the way that software is being developed has been changed, not only maintained. So the engineers in their day-to-day, the notion of it works on my machine is dead. Even throughout the software development lifecycle, they are operating in remote environments and dev, QA, staging, wherever they are, where they have their Kubernetes clusters or containers, serverless, whatever, and they have kind of similar challenges to production there. They have to redeploy every time they want to test something. If they want to add new logs or metrics or traces, it's redeployment. It's not only compiling and checking it on their own machine. So that's kind of what we've seen over the last few years, that the challenges in their day-to-day on what they're spending time and where's their kind of bottlenecks in their operation has changed, and this is kind of what we aim to help them with.
Yeah, it's probably not the best solution to run Prometheus in your dev environment and try to do distributed tracing and figure out what's happening.
Yeah, that's difficult.
A little bit of a heavyweight. I mean, a great solution for other environments. Well, tell us a little bit. I know you had some analysis before KubeCon. Tell us what's happening.
Yeah, so basically, what we always aim to do is to shift left and to give developers both the data they need in terms of more, we have the live debugger, we have the live logger, we're adding metrics and all sorts of capability in terms of what we give them, but also the how. And the how is very important, and we've seen it, we can talk about it in a second, but we've seen it that developers, we have our web ID that, is a full platform, we can do everything in terms of real estate within the browser, but sometimes developers, as we know, developers likes to consume products in various different ways. So we have, of course, our web UI, and we've just released our ID plugin for the IntelliJ family, so for the JetBrains family, so IntelliJ and Golang and these types of IDEs that will enable them to use and consume Rookout from within the IDE. So putting the non-breaking breakpoints there, whether it's production all the way to the end, you can instrument production directly from your ID, but also, as I mentioned before, also throughout the software development lifecycle. So, even if you have your dev environment, which is distributed, and it's not that far, but it's half far, and the deployment time is not 3 hours, but 20 minutes. Every time you have to add a new log line, it's not 20 minutes going to have a coffee, 20 minutes going to talk to your friend. So this is, you're using Rookout, you don't have to redeploy all the time. You just press the button. Within a millisecond, you can add the log or the metric that you want, and that's kind of more of the productivity play. The velocity of development, the quality of development, their ability to leverage the new types of infrastructure that exists out there, but not feeling the pains that it brings with it for them.
Yeah, very familiar with JetBrains and the IntelliJ, et cetera, PyCharm, all the other IDE environments. It seems like, the more you can make a tool operate in the way that developers are already familiar with, they know how to do stops and steps through code and do testing within their IDEs and their local environment. So how would that look in an IDE to the developer if they plugged in Rookout? What would pop up? What would show? How would they interact?
Just as they're used to using normal breakpoints, they have the lines, they're marking the point. So they'll mark the point and they'll have kind of 2 rows. One is the normal breakpoint, one is the Rookout breakpoint. When they place that, they can, of course, slice and dice which environments they want to collect the data from, like a normal platform, whether it's production, pre-production, a single pod or 10,000 pods. They can have conditional breakpoints, they can have rate limiting or context understanding for what they want to collect, customized log lines, whatever. Very much similar to the experience that they have. In addition, of course, to, you've mentioned how they like to use it, APIs and CLI capabilities to enable them to automate, to enable them to, to geek out and use and leverage the value that we bring in, any way that they want.
Yeah, all your messages are right there. Command line if you want to jump in that way.
Yeah.
Great. So how do people get a hold of that? Do they have to buy a subscription to it? Is it just downloadable and from the IDE? How do you use it?
Of course, as most
you got to make some money. I mean, we know too.
We are making money, thank God. But eventually, we have a community edition. They can go, they can download. It's free, with license restrictions of that sort. But afterwards, if they want to increase, if they want company-wide adoption, they can contact us, and we'll find a way to work together.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So tell us about the show. I mean, so what's interesting? I'm having more conversations about developer productivity, engineering productivity. Times are getting tight. People need to get the most out of their resources, and developers have kind of moved from, or IT have moved from sort of the back office to, it's part of our business strategy. We got to deliver code and capabilities through software and cloud native. And that seems to be one of the big drivers around why there's such an interest around developer productivity. Do you see it from an individual developer, I want to be more productive, or it's more driven by development managers, engineering efficiency, things like that?
I think both. First of all, engineers want to spend their time writing code or writing bugs or writing features, but whatever they're writing, but to deliver value to the organization. They don't like debugging. They don't like to deal with stuff which is not actually writing business logic.
Switching between tools and environments.
Exactly. So, we give it to them. We reduce, the time that they spend on things that they don't like significantly, and, eliminate waiting time or deployment times or context switching, which within their day-to-day. So, that's on the individual level. Organizational level, of course, first of all, every company wants to be productive. A company wants to improve themselves. But as you mentioned, times are tough. We've seen it yesterday with some big companies' reports and plunging in the stock market. But eventually, everyone is feeling it. The VC space and the investment in our space, and where a year ago we would have talked to clients in terms of sales processes. It was only production and customers and mean time to resolution, and that kind of messaging around it today kind of shifted, and everyone looking at cost, and everyone looks at unit economics, and everyone looks at spend, and some layoffs and reductions and these types of elements, which brings back kind of how can I squeeze more out of my engineering dollars? How can I do more with less? Which is kind of the goggles for the engineering managers or the higher up management, which is kind of, in addition, of course, to the production value, which is always there for Rookout, we enable them, on a scale, you save an engineer an hour a day or 2 hours a day times X amount of engineers, that, that can multiply to a huge amount. And, in the past, as when, money was cheap last year, or, what happened in the market, you wanted more out of your engineering team, you throw 3-4 more people to the fire, and you'll get it. Today it's not like that. Today it's like
it's hard to find those people, right? I mean, you can, but it's
hard to find, and it's hard to pay.
Yes.
They don't want
experienced.
No, that's kind of what we're hearing from our clients, is that Rookout kind of gives superpowers even to junior engineers. So the older or the more experienced engineers they know what they're doing. They know how their code looks. They know how the application is behaving. Someone new joins, and he has no idea. And just by reading the code, he can't understand anything. So we give him the ability to sit with Rookout, kind of debug or understand what's going on in production, in real production, not staging, not simulations of the application in closer environments. It's like reducing the ramp-up time super significant.
Now the plugin for IDs that's available today.
Available
that you announced?
On our website.
Very cool. I'll have to stop by and see it. Sounds pretty cool. I'll run over and take a look. Well, good. It's interesting. Since Valencia, a lot more people have been more comfortable coming out. I think. I mean, even Valencia, it was well attended, and it was great to see so many developers, t-shirts, backpacks, people walking around.
Swag bags.
That's my people. Hey, and here, also too, really well attended. It seems like people are taking more time to have deeper conversations when they're coming by booths or stopping in here. I think right now is sort of the time to stand and deliver. We gotta ship code, right? We moved to the cloud. We invested in cloud native. We've done these things. When
now we have to live with it.
Tough.
Now we have to live with it. To maintain it, to continue to develop new features. To a lot of big enterprises needs to modernize themselves. A lot of new challenges out there.
Very cool. Well, hope you continue to have a good show.
Thank you.
Great to talk with you again, Shahar, and good luck with the rest of KubeCon, and maybe we'll see you in Amsterdam or whatever the next
April, right?
Yes, April. Yeah, we're trying to figure out logistics already. How we're going to do that another show.
We'll figure it out.
So we'll get there. All right, man.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for stopping by.
Cheers.
Be sure to check them out. You can go to rookout.com or io.com. Okay, perfect. Yeah, definitely check it out. And we're having lots of conversation about developer productivity and taking some of the barriers and things that are getting in the way to help folks be able to ship code. So don't go away. We're going to be right back with some more great interviews, just like with Shahar. So we'll be here. We'll see you in a minute.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Dustin Ingram, who's a staff software engineer for Google, and we're talking about all things related to open source security. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Really great to be here.
I would say in the last year, there's been more focus on this issue than any time in the previous decade or 2 decades combined. And I think the question that people are starting to have is, well, we know that there's been a couple of incidents involving zero-day vulnerabilities, but just how concerned should folks be about open source security right now? What is the real level of angst, I guess, and maybe are we overly concerned at this point?
I don't think we're overly concerned. So, yeah, I think for a lot of people that have worked in sort of the space for a long time, we're feeling kind of vindicated. Like a lot of people have been talking about open source security for a while, but it seems you're right. Like just within the last year or two, there's just been this incredible increased focus, partially due to some high profile attacks. But I think a lot of people are sort of getting it, like understanding how much open source underpins essentially all technology, and sort of like the gaps that exist and, the kind of obvious improvements that we could make.
Is it your perception that the bad guys are getting more adept at compromising these various projects? Because not everything is Linux, right? A lot of these projects are a handful of people who are doing it as much out of love and a hobby as they do it for any semblance of actual work. So are we seeing more attacks against the components that make up our software supply chain?
I think it depends on what you consider to be an attack, right? There's just this really wide gradient of what you could consider an attack on some open source software, right? So, for example, like malware attacks on open indexes like Python package index or npm, they're way up, right? But those attacks are fairly low impact. So they're like high frequency, low impact. They require a user to like mistype a package name or something like that. And they're like trying to steal cryptocurrency tokens or something like that. We are maybe seeing some more high impact events too. And that would be things like the SolarWinds, which was, that was an attacker trying to compromise maybe not open source, but a similar attack could be performed against open source potentially, or vulnerabilities like Log4j, right? And that could have been compromised as well.
So Google is heavily invested in open source software. What exactly are you guys doing to help address this issue, and what is it you wish others were doing to help you?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm on Google's open source security team. We call ourselves Ghost. And so this is a team that was sort of born out of the U.S. White House's executive order, right? So Google made some commitments to the White House that we would sort of help the broad open source ecosystem to make changes here to make open source a little more resilient to things like Log4j and other potential attacks. So our team is a extremely externally focused team. Like our mission is to improve open source, the open source that everybody uses, not just Google, right? And we do, obviously have some benefit to Google because Google uses a ton of open source. Google decided a really long time ago that like it potentially can be more secure to rely on open source and use the same open source that everyone else uses. But that does come with like some responsibility to act and improve and contribute back to those open source things. So my team focuses sort of broadly across all open source security topics. That includes supply chain security, vulnerability management, doing fuzzing and vulnerability discovery. We have a whole team that works on the Linux kernel specifically. And then we do some other stuff as well that's less focused on technology, more focused on outcomes. So we've contributed to policy in the US and elsewhere. And then we do a lot of funding as well. So funding open source foundations and things like that.
Are you primarily focused on the projects you contribute to, or is this a broader effort where you're helping maintainers and contributors of all kinds of open source projects?
Yeah, there's a couple classes of projects that Google cares about. So one, like we publish a lot of open source. Before this, I worked for Google Cloud and I helped maintain a lot of the open source libraries that we publish as Google to help our cloud customers do stuff with cloud. And it's important to Google that when we publish open source packages, when we publish things like TensorFlow, stuff like that, that those are secure and that we're doing the steps necessary to protect our users. There's another class too of the open source that Google consumes, right? We use a lot of our own open source. We also use a lot of what we call third-party open source, stuff that comes from elsewhere in the ecosystem. So we are also focused on those dependencies because they're it's sometimes in critical Google environments and ecosystems and things like that. So we do maybe care a little bit more about those than maybe some of the other ones. But that said, like a piecemeal solution here is not going to be successful, right? We sort of recognize that we kind of need to make ecosystem and systemic level changes to open source. And we get the trickle down effects of that, right? Like if we can elevate the entire open source ecosystem to adopt some new technology or best practice or something like that, we will eventually see the effects in open source software that we consume. So I guess that third category is really like just everything. And that's really where we're most focused.
Speaking of systematic changes, what is it you wish that enterprises were doing to help with this? Because there has been criticism that says too many people are consuming open source software and benefiting from it without necessarily giving back to the community. And what does the form of those contributions look like? Because it may not always be code, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that criticism before. And, the thing is, the whole point of open source is that it is free for anyone to use. And there is no requirement to give back. So that said, I don't think any of those organizations are in the wrong in the sense that they're, stealing or, taking something that they should be paying for, something like that. That said, it is very much a community, right? And open source really only works if all the members of the community are participating to the level at which they could participate, right? So, if I'm just like, and I say this as like someone that's on the board of a software foundation, right? We don't expect everyone to contribute the same amount, but for organizations that have the means to make significant financial contributions, to put engineers on working on open source projects that they consume, those are things that I think organizations should think about doing. And the thing I actually really want organizations to do is kind of take an itemization of the open source that they're using, because you probably want to do that anyway to understand if you're potentially vulnerable or if something goes bad, what are you actually using? But in that same time, use that itemization to sort of think about, well, what is sort of the state of these open source projects? Do they actually need support? I think a lot of times, enterprise organizations, they just take it off the shelf and use it. They don't really think so much about who put it on the shelf or where it came from. And so that's something, my team is very much trying to do, something Google's been doing for a long time, is just sort of like trying to upstream support as much as we can. But for some organizations, that might be as much as just like, when you find a bug and you think you know the solution, go and post an issue tracker and share what you've learned, potentially fix it, that kind of thing.
All right. See, freshness ingredients matter for software as much as they do for anything else. But I guess the question I would come to you with is, do you think that maybe we'll see some level of maturation of DevOps workflows as we kind of think through the use of these components? We hear a lot about DevSecOps these days. And do you think at the end of the day, this may all serve as a catalyst for kind of advancing our efforts to kind of embrace the next generation of a more secure approach to how we build software?
100%. Yeah. I think, a lot of, so I'm one of the maintainers of the Python package index, and I've been saying for a long time, please don't trust anything that's on the index. It's an open index. Anyone can publish anything to it. I think for a long time, it was kind of okay to just trust what was there. And a lot of people adopted practices that they didn't really, spend too much time thinking about what they were consuming, whether, there was integrity in those artifacts they're consuming, that kind of thing. And then I think everyone got a little spooked, right? And I think that's kind of a good thing that happened, because now people are sort of looking at, well, what if something did go wrong here? What if this thing that I'm using had a serious vulnerability? What's my path to remediation? And those are questions that I think for a lot of organizations, they hadn't really thought through, and now they are thinking through it. So not only do they have the opportunity now to think about it and adopt the practices necessary, but people are coming out of the woodwork to provide technologies to make that even easier than it was before too.
And it seems like at least that even a few small steps will make a huge difference. I mean, it's not that difficult perhaps to even just check to make sure that the component you're using is the latest version of something, and there isn't some known vulnerability in that. And we seem to wind up shipping a lot of known vulnerabilities in code out of simple inertia. But I mean, does this have to be rocket science to solve, or are there just really some simple fundamental things that can be done that will make a huge difference?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there are simple fundamental things that can be done for the best possible use case, right? The organization that is using a lot of modern tools, using modern languages, has already adopted a lot of best practices that have come before this. We could definitely make it easy for them to increase their security around open source. But unfortunately, that's not the reality of what a lot of software looks like for a lot of open source consumers, right? A lot of them are far behind those best practices. Like my team, I have to remind myself a lot that we're way out on the bleeding edge, right? We're sort of thinking way into the future about what this should look like. If you were to build a new project, what you should do. But for a lot of people, they have to deal with all this legacy, and it makes it hard to adopt new technology, new tools, new practices, and that kind of thing. So I think, there is an opportunity there to improve, but it's going to be hard for a lot of organizations.
Right. On the other end of the spectrum, do you think AI will help someday? Will I eventually get a message that says something to the effect of "Danger, Will Robinson," if you use that software component?
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff being done here now that I can maybe go into a little detail about. Not stuff that necessarily Google's doing, but there's things that are happening in the ecosystem. So one thing that you could sort of think a little bit about in terms of machine learning and AI is fuzzing. So Google's had a OSS Fuzz, which is a fuzzing service for open source for a long time, and this service it keeps getting smarter and smarter, right? It's sometimes challenging to find these edge cases in critical software projects that have potential vulnerabilities that we don't know about. And the more we can do fuzzing, the more efficient fuzzing can get, the better those results and the quicker we can find those vulnerabilities. The other thing that is somewhat related to machine learning is malware detection. So my team has some folks that work with the Open Software Security Foundation on malware detection practices specifically. And so some of that is also machine learning based, right? We have a data set, let's say, of known malware, and they follow certain patterns. And sometimes those signals are meaningful, right? Sometimes we can train a model to see what looks like malware and potentially detect that. But I think at the end of the day, like that only gets us like 90% of the way there. There still needs to be some investment in, providing adequate, humans reviewing code, that kind of thing, and just like general best practices around. Even if there's a problem, how do we remediate it?
So what is your sense at the end of the day? A lot of folks will listen to this and you hear some folks start to say, well, maybe you shouldn't use as much open source software, but ultimately, is open source software more secure, less secure, or equally insecure as any other software component?
I think it's secure in a different way. I wouldn't want anything that's happening to open source right now, any of the focus on increasing security right now, to spook people from using open source, because the reality of open source is that these projects have been around for a long time. They've had a lot of contributors, probably more than you could if you were to build something yourself, right? And the expertise is pretty high as well. And just the nature of open source means that potential attackers have had a lot of opportunities to identify problems, and that's a good thing and bad thing, right? That means that if you're shipping something closed source, maybe the attacker hasn't seen the source code, but you also haven't had the support of the collective community to determine if folks that had good intentions, if they were able to find problems in that as well. I think open source is just incredibly powerful in the sense that we have just a giant community, a far larger body of expertise overall than your organization could provide to a certain software library or package. So I would say, like, I find open source and think that it's more secure, and encourage everyone to use open source as much as possible, because I think like that collaboration is actually where most of the security comes from.
All right. So what's your best advice to folks? What would you recommend that they do if they're just starting to get their arms around the whole conversation? Because to your point, a lot of us are further down the path, but looking back in hindsight, what do you know now that you kind of wish you knew a year ago, 2 years ago?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, yeah. Well, what I know now that I didn't know 2 years ago is just some of the new technologies that Google's been working with some of our, and been collaborating with some other organizations to develop. And I'm happy to talk about those too. I think just sort of when we think about it at a high level, I think a lot of organizations don't have the right insight into what software they're using. So that's really the first step, is like, just figure out what you're using, what version you're using, where it's coming from, right? And that might sound really easy. That's a really hard step to make for a lot of organizations. The next logical step after that is, okay, you know what you're using. Are there known vulnerabilities in it, right? So one of the projects that my team works on is the open source vulnerability format and service. So this is a shared service for sort of collecting vulnerabilities for all known open source packages and making that available to various auditing tools and infrastructure. So for example, like once you have this itemization, once you know what open source you're using a service like OSV would allow you to say, okay, there's a known CVE here. I need to upgrade this package and take the steps necessary, and potentially take those steps in an automated way that you don't really have to do a lot of work to fix that vulnerability. CVEs, it's something that's good to be aware of, but a CVE doesn't necessarily mean that you're impacted. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's super high severity. So, usually the right answer when you find a CVE is to upgrade, but it's not always the end of the world. There are other things I think I encourage organizations to think about adopting as well. So one is just some means to verify software integrity, right? So for some ecosystems, this might be like a hash that you can verify that the organization that published the software artifact is actually what you're consuming, and all sorts of software installers have tools for doing hash checking. Another step beyond that would be actually signing, and for some projects that might mean like PGP signing. One of the projects that my team works on with a bunch of other organizations is SigStore, which is essentially what we think is a better model for software signing. And I think if you have the opportunity to adopt SigStore, you should absolutely do it, because it solves a lot of problems that PGP has already, and it works really nicely with a lot of like consumer tools like GitHub Actions and Google Cloud and things like that as well.
So is there some central location to go find all these tools and services? Because it seems like we're asking people to kind of, by happenstance, go find all this stuff. So is there some place where, I can go tomorrow and say, all right, here's the tools and the path to, sanity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a little biased because I'm talking about the stuff that I think and Google thinks is a really good idea. And there's not really a list of those tools anywhere, right? There's not a list of like what Google recommends. That said, we work really closely with all of the members of the Open Source Software Security Foundation, OpenSSF. This is a new organization as part of the Linux Foundation. And all of these projects have folks from that organization, from various other member organizations that work on these together. And I think the OpenSSF is essentially what you should think of as the clearinghouse for how open source software should be done. All these projects are open source as well, right? These aren't commercial projects. These are all open source projects that solve open source software security problems. And SigStor is a member project of the OpenSSF, for example. So I think I would really direct people to go to the OpenSSF, look to the OpenSSF to sort of be the voice for what would be the best practice here, what technologies are worth adopting, that kind of thing.
All right, awesome. Folks, you heard it here first. The tools are out there. You just got to make a little effort to go find them. But if we all work together, we can maybe live in a more secure software world after all. Hey, Dustin, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Oded Harevin, and he's the CEO for Achilles, and we're talking about secrets management, which is not necessarily a new topic, but it sure is top of mind for a lot of folks these days. Oded, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, how are you? Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
What exactly is the fundamental issue with secrets management? Developers have been trying to manage secrets forever with mixed success. It seems like it's always been a problem, and we're more aware of the issue these days. But what exactly is the hurdle? What keeps tripping us up here?
Yeah, so secret sprawl has been a phenomenon that have been, you might say, in the old days, right? Having passwords within a source code or within a certain configuration file was not something special, because in the on-prem perimeter, right, that everyone thought about, it seems like it's okay. No one would get into our network and that would be fine. The new secret sprawl problem is about having thousands of containers that need to communicate with each other, and suddenly you have much more secrets than you used to have. There are DevOps platform today with infrastructure as code, with everything as code, with automated processes that are running. And basically, the magnitude of the problem became much more severe, having more servers than employees than what we used to have 10 years ago. So everything, by the way, is as a result of the cloud transformation and the adoption of DevOps methodologies.
So how do we solve this problem? Because to your point, we do have this sprawl. So is this something I solve on the developer side, or do I solve it in my CI/CD DevOps workflow? Where exactly is the point of attack for solving the issue?
Well, all of those places. Well, you can start slowly but surely with your DevOps environments, which requires plugins. You're plugging in whatever that needed in order to connect to a secrets management system that would allow the fetch of those secrets in runtime. Okay, so after that, you can go to the actual code and then use SDKs in order to fetch those secrets in runtime. You would need both because, for instance, Jenkins and whatever you're using for CI/CD or Kubernetes clusters would expect those secrets to be there. And code specifically would be able to use any SDKs, right? So it depends where you want to start. But that's not the whole thing, right? So for source code configuration file, that would be good. So you have the CI/CD, you have Kubernetes, and you have the SDKs as we've mentioned. But there are other places like the traditional Excel sheet that people still use So for that, we provide also CLI, and we also provide browser add-on that would allow you to basically completely eliminate the secrets that you're using. There are SSH keys that mostly are kept just on the disk itself, and we're providing a mechanism that allows you to completely migrate to SSH certificates. So all of those all together, it's a 360 degrees, a problem and a solution that you need to solve. So, yeah.
But the common thread seems to be that we need to put the secrets in some sort of repository that's isolated from the rest of the code so that when the code is compromised, the secrets don't go with it.
Exactly. This is exactly the notion of secrets management, the elimination of whatever secrets that you have, whenever they are. And by the way, we haven't defined the term secrets, right? Passwords, credentials, certificates, and keys, right? This is a combined world of both IAM and the PKI encryption world altogether. So all of those objects need to be eliminated as much possible to be reduced in terms of the potential compromise whenever they are being breached.
Are the bad guys getting smarter at looking for this stuff? Do they know what they're looking for? Are they creating specific types of tools to go after it? I mean, what is the level of threat that we're seeing that's aimed specifically at these types of secrets?
Well, even if they're not getting smarter, the fact is that almost every breach, famous breach that you've heard, and just the recent Uber and Toyota have some type of secret involved, right? What used to be the privileged access management problem 10 years ago or 15 years ago now becomes much more severe again as a result of the rise of that phenomenon of secret sprawl. So basically, again, every famous breach today have some kind of credentials hacked, certificate exploited, encryption key that was found somewhere. So it becomes even simple for attackers to basically search for that because they are there in their thousands, right? Just as a result of the way that we're currently working.
Speaking of that, it almost sounds like, our culture is as big as a problem as the technology itself. So how do we change the culture among folks who are kind of used to being, shall we say, maybe a little careless with their secrets?
Well, I wouldn't say that they're careless. And as far as what we've seen, there's a good trend in the market today of more and more people that are more aware of where do they put their credentials, especially among the DevOps community, by the way. Although there are people that are still saying there's the security, there's the infrastructure, and they would never work together. DevOps in general, we find them to be more and more responsible for what that they produce. It's true that they care about the bottom line, how to get faster to results. But in terms of responsibility, there's a point in time, and speaking also as an infrastructure person like 20 years ago, if you have a password here and there, that's true, that what we used to have. But today the problem is jumping right at you and you feel that there is something that you need to do with it because it's not just a security thing, rather than operationally, you're not able to basically manage all of those altogether. And you need something to be able to not just vault your secrets and not just rotate the passwords that you have or issue new certificates, rather than dynamically create just-in-time credentials whenever they are needed. So it becomes now a question not just about security, but for DevOps, it's now a question of efficiency, right? Whether I would be able to not just leverage an existing credentials, rather than creating them on the fly and releasing that credentials as much as I do that, or the same that I do it as a DevOps person with my resources. I define resources and then they are being released. Therefore, credentials need to be defined and to be deleted. It's smart both on the security and in terms of the operational aspect.
Are the cybersecurity folks getting more involved? Are compliance people starting to become aware of this issue? Are they asking tougher questions? And that's part of this whole shift towards DevSecOps that we're talking about.
Well, generally speaking, credentials certificates have always been within the regulations and whatever compliance that was there. SOC 2 specifically for SaaS companies is definitely relevant in terms of rotating password, retaining credentials. So we do see movement out of there and good motivation to start dealing with secrets management. But to be very honest with you, it is becoming a best practice. So we're not even waiting for regulation to be very specific about secrets management within workloads within DevOps platform, rather than just seeing it as a best practice within whatever DevOps security system or program that you have.
So are you cautiously optimistic about the future state of application security? Are we really getting better? Or I wonder if we have so many applications out there with so many issues in it that the technical debt is overwhelming as it is, and we'll never solve this issue.
Well, I'm optimistic by nature, so it's hard for me to answer differently. But I'll tell you this, 20 years ago or 17 years ago, I was managing a team or commanding a team in the Israeli Defense Forces that was specialized with consulting to application systems and application system development teams. And back then, the tools that we've had in order to understand how to secure the application were so narrow. We were trying to get the attention of the developers. And it was like elephants speaking with, I don't know, with whatever, with alligators, okay? We did not have any common language. Today, to see application security engineer speaks with a different engineer or DevOps, to even have the concept of DevSecOps, whether it is widely used or not, but to see all of those engagement and collaboration around it, it is tremendously different than what we used to have it like 20 years ago. So definitely optimistic about how we're going to make it and how we're going to make it better.
Do you think we might have to create a new role called the security engineer in these processes? Because, we've seen site reliability engineers, and so will security engineers emerge to lock down our software supply chains?
Oh, not a question. Well, DevSecOps is kind of, part of it. I've seen application security engineers as part of R&D. So it is starting to happen. And I think that we already see product security within software companies, but I think that the trend would become even more broad and maybe more early in the development cycles. The aspect of security needs to be spoken much earlier, right? But again, today, it's a complete different thing than what we used to have. So the trend is very, very positive.
So what's that one behavior that you see people doing in organizations that kind of just makes you shake your head? And what's your best advice for fixing it?
Communicate. I think that communication among infrastructure teams, security teams, but I'll make it even more specific for you. I see, unfortunately, sometimes teams within the security team, more of larger enterprises, right? IAM that does not necessarily speak with the security infrastructure, with the network security infrastructure. And you'll be surprised how ZTNA is close to privileged access management. I see cases where PKI are not necessarily speaking with DevOps, although it is very, very close, right? DevOps require those kind of certificates, but the PKI sometimes can be more traditional thinking, right? So this whole realm, and by the way, this is what fascinates us about what's happening here, is transitioning. And there are a lot of different systems that used to be disparate and siloed. And today with secrets management, it is kind of you might call it as a swirl that takes all of those use cases all together with certificate automation, with key management, with credentials management, password management, privileged access management, all of those all together with a core of secrets at the center. So what we see is that organizations that are, smart to actually communicate between all of those teams, they gain a lot of value. And at the end of the day, also, they can reduce a lot of clutter and a lot of costs in terms of how those use cases get sold.
All right, folks. Well, I guess loose lips still sink the proverbial digital ship, so keep those secrets close. Hey, Oded, thanks for being on the show.
Sure. Anytime, Mike. Thank you for having me.
All right. Back to you guys in the studio.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had an amazing set of interviews with industry professionals to give you the inside scoop into the tech world. We'll be back again tomorrow, so we hope to see you then. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.